talking about this week has been absolutely ridiculous. The amount of messages and calls they're getting this week about people wanting to rehome their dog. They couldn't keep their dog. They had to get rid of their dog. 50,000 excuses. Anyway, she was going on, talking about, if you can't, you don't need no dog if you can't. They're saying, but a lot of them be saying they pull too much, or they barking too much, or, you know. I put in there under there. I said I have one dog we rescued. I said all he wanted to do was stay by my side. I said it took him a little over a year to really come out and start really being himself.
That's part of the pack. Yeah.
And I said he's the most well mannered dog I have.
Mm-hmm.
I said I love him so much. I do.
The House will be in order. The chair lays before the House a communications from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., November 12, 2025. I hereby appoint the Honorable Mike Boss to act as Speaker Pro Tempore on this day. Signed, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by the Chaplain Kibben.
Would you pray with me? Lead us, O Lord, this day on paths of righteousness, that emerging from these long weeks of trial and testing, we may discern what you would have us learn and how we are now to respond in faith. This shutdown has grated nerves and rattled souls. None have come through this impasse unscathed. Remind us that the strength of your presence and guiding hand have always been with us and remain with us still. so that having persevered, we may learn the importance of patience, most especially with each other, as we commit to finishing the work set before us. And having endured, may we receive the wisdom that persistence reveals, calling us to lead with humility and to respond with mercy. Lord, grant this ordeal would mature and perfect our faith, not in the process, but faith in your provision, not in seeking victory, but in pursuing virtue. Going forward, may we prove worthy of the responsibility you have given us and faithful to the stewardship of the limitless blessings you have entrusted to our care. We commit to your will the work of this day, that it would glorify you and advance the work of your kingdom. In your sovereign name we pray. Amen.
Pursuant to Clause 13 of Rule 1, the Journal of the Last Days Proceedings is approved. The chair will lead the House in pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir, pursuant to the permission granted in Clause 2H of Rule 2 of the Rules of the U.S. House of Representatives, the clerk received the following message from the Secretary of the Senate on November 10, 2025 at 10:45 p.m. that the Senate passed Senate 778, Senate 2296, Senate 2392, that the Senate passed with an amendment, H.R. 5371. Signed sincerely, Kevin F. McCumber, Clerk.
Pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1, the chair declares the House in recess subject to the call of the chair.
Declare recess at any time. Today, the Rules Committee is convening to end, finally, the Democrat-induced Chuck Schumer-sponsored shutdown. It has been over 40 days since we last sat in this room when Republicans advanced their responsible, nonpartisan, clean CR, and all but one Democrat voted to shut the government down. The amount of wild rhetoric we've heard from Democrats ever since they shut the government down is astounding. They have bent over backwards and contorted themselves to such a degree that they've deluded themselves into believing that they're somehow doing right by the American people. But don't take my word for it. Listen to what Democrats in the Senate who voted to reopen the government are saying about the absurd position that their own party has taken. Senator John Fetterman, it should have never come to this. This was a failure. Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, I've consistently voted against shutting down the government because I know the pain it is causing working families. And Minority Whip Dick Durbin, I cannot accept a strategy which wages political battle at the expense of my neighbor's paycheck or the food for his children. The Democrat government shutdown that has lasted over 40 days did not have to happen. It did not have to be this way. Our work in service to the American people did not have to be interrupted. Service members, Capitol Police, air traffic controllers, and countless others did not have to miss their paychecks. SNAP benefits did not have to lapse unnecessarily. Airports around the nation did not have to scale back their operating statuses and leave millions of travelers in a lurch. The list goes on and on. Now we'll be voting on another iteration of the CR that does not contain any of the hostage demand that Democrats made. So all that bluster and showboarding for over 40 days on their part led to a big fat nothing burger, and they're walking away empty-handed. As the ranking member once said during a debate on the floor this year, wow, what a victory. I anticipate we'll hear a lot of lecturing and blame cast at Republicans for everything under the sun today. We'll hear a lot of bottled up angst with a lot of exclamation points and raised voices to boot, directed at the president too, not surprising. What we won't hear from our colleagues across the aisle today is they're taking ownership of the chaos they've unleashed upon the nation. We won't hear them apologize to the American people for gaslighting them incessantly. And we won't hear an admission that the only reason they shut down the government is to cover up for a policy failure that they themselves concocted and stamped an end date on. But it's a new day, and maybe they'll have a change of heart, see the light, and come clean. We'll just have to wait and see. With that, I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. McGovern, for any comments he wishes to make.
Well, hello, Madam Chair. Welcome back.
Hello, ranking member.
Long time no see. I hardly recognize you guys. Where the hell have you been? It's good to see you back on back in the Capitol building. We've been looking everywhere for you guys. I mean, seriously, we were worried. We actually started handing out missing person posters. Nobody has seen you for 8 weeks. But hey, I'm glad that you're okay. I'm glad that you survived your nice 2-month paid vacation while Democrats stayed in Washington to try to end this shutdown. But here's the deal. Most Americans think that what Republicans did, skipping town in a shutdown, has been one of the most disgraceful, embarrassing, pathetic eras in the modern history of the House of Representatives. For 8 weeks, Speaker Johnson let you all stay home while Americans missed paychecks, skipped meals, and watched their costs explode. Republicans quit their jobs. They disappeared. And they can argue all they want that the House did its job and that's why they went home. It's just BS. The House didn't do its job. If Republicans had done their job, we wouldn't be here right now voting on a different bill than the one that they passed. But instead of working with us on trying to end the shutdown, they all just left. They abandoned their offices, but more importantly, they abandoned the American people. And just so people know, while Republicans sat on their couches waiting for someone to tell them what to do, House Democrats were here. We were here working. We were meeting with regular people, talking with folks about next year's skyrocketing health insurance premiums. I've been back and forth to my district almost every weekend. People showed me the letters that they got on their premiums. They're doubling and they're tripling, not because of Democrats, but because Republicans are failing to act. They extended tax breaks for billionaires in like a nanosecond. That got done. They wasted no time helping out the well-off and the well-connected. But when it came time to help regular people, to extending the health care tax credits that 24 million people depend on, they didn't just say no, they shut the government down over it. Republicans skipped town for 8 weeks because Democrats had the gall to ask you to do something to help regular people. And you know what? It's a real shame. Republicans are selling out middle America, selling out working people at a time when affordability is the #1 issue. And as we see record levels of inequality in this country, Republicans are selling out working people, all so they can do the bidding of the billionaire class. I mean, look what's happening. Trump's reckless tariffs continue to wreak havoc on the economy. He says food prices are way down. That's coming from a guy who dines on caviar at Mar-a-Lago. He's never shopped for groceries a day in his life. He doesn't have to pick between plastic or paper. But his tariffs are costing the average American household over $1,200 this year. And next year, it will be $1,600. That's money for groceries, for bills, for rent, taken out of the American people's wallets. And he's not even hiding it. He's rubbing it in. Trump is literally renovating his bathroom and posting about it on social media while regular people are getting letter premiums going up $1,000. Stay afloat, and this guy's golfing. He had Air Force One fly over a football game. How much did that cost? He shut down the airspace while regular travelers are stranded all over the country. The administration is funneling $40 billion to bail out Argentina. Republicans are literally subsidizing an entirely different country instead of keeping families in North Carolina or Minnesota or Texas or Indiana from going bankrupt if they face emergency hospital bills. And then giving your donors a fancy new ballroom at the White House while moms and dads can't afford to put food on the table. And speaking of putting food on the table, Trump illegally withheld food assistance from 42 million Americans, kids, veterans, seniors, working families. 2 federal court orders demanded that he pay out these benefits in full. But he would rather appeal to the highest court in the land to starve people out than to simply provide them with the food assistance that he is legally obligated to send to American families. Like, who does that? I mean, that's the Republican policy position. We'll give you your food if you let us take away your health care. I mean, who the hell thinks like that? And I know Republicans don't care. I know your donors have private doctors and insurance CEOs on speed dial. But could you at least pretend to do something about the 20 million Americans who are about to see their health care premiums soar? Or the 4 million people who could lose their coverage altogether? You don't even have a health care plan. You've been promising one for over a decade, and we've never seen it because it doesn't exist. Or maybe it's simply just hiding behind the missing appropriation bills that this Republican majority hasn't passed. I don't know. But what I do know is this. Republicans have been in charge for 292 days. That's 292 days to do something, anything, to lower costs, to bring down prices, to make America more affordable, to do something about health care, tariffs, grocery prices, rent, or heating bills. And what did you do? You handed out tax breaks to billionaires and took the longest paid vacation in modern history. Even your own colleagues called it out. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene says you guys messed up. When Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks you've gone too far, you might want to rethink things. And by the way, you also refused to even swear in our new colleague, the duly elected representative from Arizona's 7th District, Adelita Grijalva. Why? Because she will represent the 218th signature on a discharge petition in the Epstein files. Oh, we didn't forget about those either. Don't worry. We won't forget that the Speaker of the House refused to swear in the first Latina ever elected to represent Arizona because he was more concerned about protecting pedophiles than getting the truth out there for the survivors. But that's just the perfect metaphor for the Trump economy. If you're rich and powerful, you get ahead. If you're a regular person, Republicans will not lift a finger to help you. And I want to be crystal clear. House Democrats represent something very different. We refuse to accept a government that moves at lightning speed to give tax breaks to billionaires, but then goes home for 8 weeks when it comes to ensuring health care is affordable for working families. We've said it from day one of this shutdown. We will sit down with any Republicans, anytime, any place, anywhere, in order to find a path forward that would reopen the government and finds a solution to Republicans' health care crisis. But we're not just going to roll over and accept your way, your my way or the highway approach to governance. If you need our votes, you need to work with us. But you refuse because you're more interested in extremism than governance. But here's the thing. The beautiful thing about politics is that you don't really lose until you quit trying. And Democrats are going to keep trying because people are counting on us to do something about this health care crisis. And when their health care premiums double and triple, and they will, and they're your constituents, I'm sure you're getting the calls, Republicans will own it. Every premium spike, every family forced off coverage, every life put at risk, you own it. And good luck going home to your constituents to explain why you sold them out in order to appease the millionaires and billionaires. Extending these tax credits is the right thing to do. It is the moral thing to do. 13 House Republicans have said it needs to be done because soaring health care costs will devastate our constituents, whether they live in a red state or a blue state. So I want people to know that we will keep fighting. I will keep fighting. My colleagues on this committee, on the Democratic side, will keep fighting for a government that puts the working class first and for a Congress that actually shows up and does their damn job. I yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. And I want to welcome all the members. I should have said that. I'm very pleased to see everyone. Without objection, any prepared statements that our witnesses may have will be included in the record. And now welcome our first panel, Chairman Cole and Ranking Member DeLauro from the Committee on Appropriations. Your full statement will be submitted for the record. We ask that you summarize. Chairman Cole, I welcome your testimony and welcome you back to the Rules Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, and esteemed members of the Rules Committee, I thank you for your warm welcome and your kind invitation to testify today. As members of this committee are all too painfully aware, for the last 6 weeks, the federal government has been shut down. Millions of workers have gone unpaid. Air traffic control functions have slowed to a near halt. SNAP benefits expired, forcing millions of Americans to either find assistance from food banks or else go hungry. Seniors saw telepath resources suspended, and Head Start education programs for children have been closing. These are just a few of the examples of the harm being inflicted on our nation, yet it didn't have to be this way. Nearly 2 months ago, the House passed a continuing resolution that would have kept the government open and operating. This would have allowed Congress time to keep working on the FY 2026 appropriations process through regular order, but instead, Senate Democrats blocked its passage. The result of this political temper tantrum has been the longest government shutdown in the nation's history. For 42 days and counting, Democrats have held the country hostage. Make no mistake, all the pain, all the suffering, and all the difficulty Americans have endured in these past 6 weeks could have and should have been avoided. Instead, the hardship and damage caused by an intentional choice made by Democratic leadership. Minority leaders Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer led their caucus to shut down the government. And for 42 days, the American people have borne the brunt of that decision and have been mere pawns at partisan hands of the Democrats. At long last, reason has prevailed, and the measure before us will finally end this pointless shutdown. Today's bill will not only reopen the government, but it will also move the FY 2026 appropriations process forward, representing a return to regular order. This legislation includes 3 bipartisan, bicameral, full-year appropriations measures covering the military construction and veterans affairs, legislative branch, and agriculture, rural development, and food and drug administration divisions. These 3 bills have been negotiated between the 2 chambers and reflect a final, full, and bipartisan agreement. With passage of these 3 divisions, we will have funding in place for many of our most crucial programs. Military construction needs will be met for a full year, as will medical programs for our nation's veterans. The legislative branch will be fully funded, including critical funding enhancements for the Capitol Police and for member security. The Department of Agriculture and Food and Drug Administration will also be fully funded, as will the WIC program, to ensure that pregnant women and young children will get the food and nutrition they need to survive and to thrive. Importantly, the agreement encompasses community project funding in both the military construction and agriculture divisions, reflecting Congress's clear control over the power of the purse. Inclusion of these projects was a high priority for the Appropriations Committee, and it accomplishes this goal while holding the line on overall spending levels. We also break Senator Schumer's beloved end-of-the-year holiday omnibus habit. No more 1,000-page spending behemoths at midnight. Republicans have restored an open, line-by-line process. As we continue to make strong progress on full-year FY26 bills, we've included a continuing resolution to fund the remainder of the government through January 30th, 2026. This extension supports our ongoing work on this front, especially given the time lost during the Democratic shutdown. The simplest truth today is this: reopening the government will put an end to the chaos Democratic leadership has inflicted on Americans. It will also ensure that SNAP funds are made available to ensure that no American goes hungry. It will reestablish control of the skies, keeping our nation's air traffic moving during the holiday season. It will pay federal workers and American military personnel, and it will ensure that the government can continue to provide critical services for our constituents like roads, parks, child care, water projects, infrastructure improvements, scientific research, job training, and countless others. I look forward to continuing the FY 2026 appropriation process in the coming weeks, and I hope that, having seen the consequences of this historic shutdown on the American people, it's not a political stunt that will be repeated in the future. I thank each of you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ranking Member DeLauro, you're recognized.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chairwoman Fox, Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee. I really appreciate the opportunity to testify today. I'm so glad to be here alongside my fellow appropriator, Chairman Cole, whose partnership I appreciate it. If I can just say, first of all, welcome back. And one point about the shutdown. It's been several months where Democratic leadership has called for an opportunity to sit down, whether it has been with the House and Senate leadership or with the President of the United States, where there was just that one meeting. He reneged on the first meeting that he was involved, so that we could sort out a bipartisan agreement in trying to move forward. And the offer was there to meet anytime, any place, anywhere, so that we could really try to move forward. As I said, rebuked at every turn. And so the shutdown stands firmly in the process of the president, who rather shut down the government rather than negotiate. I'll just give you two quotes, and you can check on the quotes. He first said, it's a waste of time to meet with Leader Jeffries and Leader Schumer. The second thing he said, and he admonished his Republican colleagues and said, you need to jam the Republican continuing resolution down the throats of Democrats. I don't make it up. Those are his words. Anyway, I want to talk about why I oppose this bill. I oppose this bill because it does nothing to address the Republican health care crisis that will send costs skyrocketing for more than 20 million Americans in a matter of weeks. No, nothing has changed since yesterday's Senate vote. Healthcare costs are still poised to double or even triple for some folks practically overnight, worsening the cost of living crisis manufactured by President Trump. There is no restoration of premium subsidies, the tax credits. This bill is an empty promise, as is the promise for a vote in the Senate And as the Speaker said, no guarantee of a vote on premium subsidies in the House. All across this country, families are struggling to navigate an affordability crisis President Trump refuses to address. As a matter of fact, I think within the last 24 hours, he talked about affordability as a con job. Get out there, talk to the people of this nation, Mr. President. Energy prices are up, grocery prices are up, housing costs are up. Everything is more expensive, and now on top of that, the Republicans plan to squeeze families even harder. The report today came out that talked about families in the U.S. living paycheck to paycheck. And really, the president went to the Supreme Court to deprive kids of food, unbelievable, and now wants to deny their parents health care. This is a point, I've heard it twice already this evening here, that whether or not the government was open or shut, there was $6 billion in a contingency fund passed by Democrats and Republicans for food stamps to be used in the event of occasion like this. The administration, President Trump, refused to let those monies flow to the people who need it the most. It was not a question of whether or not the government was open or not, and let's stop aligning the two of those efforts. In my district, a mother of two named Renee Shalis, she will see her annual premium cost go up by $24,000 next year. She got her letter. That's $2,000 more per month. On top of caring for her two children, she is primary caregiver for the children's father, a brain cancer survivor who is physically and mentally unable to work. She is working tirelessly to do the right thing by her family, but she's already stretched thin. She literally cannot afford this. I'll just read you a couple of headlines from the Connecticut Press, New Haven Register. How much more can we cut back? Connecticut families brace for soaring health insurance premiums. The Connecticut Public Mirror, for middle-income Connecticut residents, sticker shock looms with ACA health subsidy set to disappear. Channel 3, Connecticut, Richfield couple faces tripling health care costs as cancer survivor needs continued care. That is a reality. And Renee's story is not an outlier. This is really harder for people all across this country. The affordable more than 50 pages worth just dealing with health care. We can solve jurisdiction of the Appropriations Committee. You know, the entire House was marginalized in this process. Senate Republicans abruptly called off talks in the middle of negotiations, made their own bills public, an agreement with all four corners, unprecedented in the modern era. And yet they made the House constitutionally impotent in moving forward. In one of the most egregious examples of something the House was not even aware of before the bills became public, the chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee secretly added language in the legislative branch bill from the Senate Majority Leader without the consent of the chair or ranking members of the subcommittee or the full committee. That allows Republican senators to sue the government for their involvement in the January 6th insurrection. And regardless of anyone's opinion on what happened on January 6th, it should be unacceptable to every member of the House that the Senate can secretly to a bill without even notifying us. The result, bill that includes a provision to give senators who may have participated in the insurrection as much as $1 million payout each, while they excluded a provision to hang a plaque honoring the police officers who put their lives on the line to defend our democracy from that same construction division includes fund. This is a fund fund that helps burn pits and Agent Orange get the care they deserve. In our markup in the summer, and the Chair Cole will remember this, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, Chair Carter negotiated a compromise to include this funding. The Senate took it out before abandoning negotiations altogether. Simply wrong. We have provided advanced funding for the medical care for veterans for the last 15 years. It's Veterans Day today, and this bill doesn't even meet the funding level that President Trump and OMB Director Vogt restored. Reason why we're here, I have one last point to make. Chairman Cole and I, is because the power of the purse belongs to the Congress. This package fails to protect that authority. Democrats fought to prevent President Trump and OMB Director from stealing from our communities, withholding funding that was approved by Democrats and Republicans, blocking the issuing of illegal pocket rescissions, preventing President Trump from unilaterally reneging on any appropriations bill. It does nothing, this package, to address these problems. You can't honestly expect Democrats to go along with any bipartisan funding proposal that can be rescinded with a party line vote, not after trust has been broken in this process. The main reason I oppose this bill is because it does not address the health care crisis that President Trump created, serious concerns with appropriations divisions. I encourage my colleagues to oppose this measure, and I thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. Chairman Cole, with respect to the agencies that would operate under a CR, this bill keeps the government running at the same level it's been at since early 2024. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it was President Biden who initially signed these funding levels into law. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct.
This bill came out of the Senate with bipartisan support, correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Chairman, passing this legislation will take away any ambiguity about pay for America's war fighters. It'll bring certainty for SNAP payments. It will guarantee that air traffic controllers, federal law enforcement officers, and other federal workers will receive back pay. Is that correct?
That too is correct.
And there's no other solution on the table that has the bipartisan backing of the Senate. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair.
So voting against this bill would be a vote to continue that uncertainty to our military SNAP recipients and federal workers. Is that not the case?
That is indeed the case.
One more question. I have been astonished to hear our colleagues say that this Republican health care crisis was manufactured by President Trump. I mean, I'm sure if I asked the clerks to read that back, that's what they say. Would you refresh our memory as to what created the Affordable Care Act, and how did we get here as a result of what happened during COVID? Would you mind doing that? President Trump was not in office in either of those cases. Is that correct?
That too is correct, Madam Chair. You know, I'm trying to limit how much time I use, how outrageous some of the statements I've heard are. The reality is, goes back to a fundamental defect in Obamacare itself. Constantly, the Affordable Care Act has made health care unaffordable. Been doing it for 15 years. The basic subsidies are in law. Our friends on the other side during COVID decided that we've got a crisis underway. We're going to add a subsidy on top of a subsidy.
The subsidy to what was called the Affordable Care Act, which was never affordable because we taxpayers who pay for our own insurance were subsidizing, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So again, it's a subsidy on top of a subsidy. Our friends added it during COVID. COVID is over. They set a date certain that the subsidies would run out. They chose the date.
And the date certain was?
December 31st of this year. So they chose that date. By the way, they did it without any Republican votes, without any consideration of reforms, without any effort to hold down the price. I mean, they literally are the big insurance companies' best friends. They funneled hundreds of billions of dollars into these things. But again, this is their legislation. They wrote it. They extended it. They added a subsidy to it. Set the date at which that subsidy was to run out. President Trump certainly wasn't president when either the original legislation was created or this additional subsidy was added. So to blame it on him instead of looking in the mirror and blaming it on yourself is the height of hypocrisy. Yeah, this is a Democratic manufactured crisis that they're blaming on everybody but themselves. And at the same time, you know, well, as they're doing that, they've decided, well, I guess we don't need to pay our men and women in uniform that are defending us. Thank God President Trump twice has pulled rabbits out of the hat and made sure that didn't happen. Or we're not going to pay our air traffic controllers or our meat inspectors or our Capitol Police that they celebrate so constantly and rightfully. So, I mean, come on. This is a totally manufactured crisis by Democrats. They've kept the government shut down. Finally, in the United States Senate, 8 pretty courageous people said, I'm not going to be part of this charade anymore. I'm going to vote to open the government. We can negotiate on these other issues. Majority Leader Thune, our own speaker, made it clear we're willing to do it. We're not going to, by the way, sign off on something that has been an utter disaster. And what the Democrats basically have asked for here is like $1.5 trillion over 10 years in exchange for a 4 or 7 week CR, or now one that will go a little bit longer since they've wasted most of the time. So, I mean, we shouldn't have any doubt about who created the crisis, who's perpetuating the crisis, and who's trying to capitalize on it politically. So I hope that answers your question.
That answers my question very well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
Yeah, so I just, you just made me think of something, Madam Chair. You said that this is merely an extension of the January 2024 spending bill, that basically it's the same, everything's the same. I think that's what you, and the Chairman just agreed with that. Does that mean that all the federal workers that were fired have been put back to work?
And this, under this bill, yeah, people that you know, were let go or rifted. And by the way, you created, my friend, the crisis that caused that to happen. So
I just want to know whether all the people that were fired from the beginning of the year whether or not the cuts in the consumer
there are provisions made to rehire people, but again, let's be clear about who put people out of work.
I can't get my question out, so I will let him answer if he lets me ask the question.
I thought I did. I apologize if I did not.
I want to know whether or not the cuts to the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau are restated, or the cuts to NIH, or, I mean, I go right down, all the DOGE cuts. I mean, are they put back?
The provisions that Democrats asked for in terms of firing in the Senate are in the bill.
No, well, that's not what this, that's not my question.
And look, if you want to be against the bill, that's perfectly fine.
The chairwoman just said that basically this is the same as all the funding that we voted for in January of 2024. I'm just asking you, the stuff that we voted for in January 2024, some of it is no longer there. And some of it, I think, has been illegally cut by the president. Mr. Lauro, do you want to give me a straight answer to that question?
Absolutely. This is really quite remarkable. Since January until now, and the number may have gone up, over 220,000 federal employees have been let go. They have, most of them let go, some who took a buyout. The other fact of the matter is, it's not the same budget, because and we have a tracker. I can give you documentation that showed you $410 billion that we appropriated. Democrats, Republicans signed into law. by the President of the United States, and that money has been terminated, it has been delayed, and it's $410 billion. I'll give you the tracker. It's about 25 or 26 pages, and you can go down and take a look at every appropriations bill, and you can find out what program has been terminated, what's been gone, and that since January has nothing to do with this crisis that the Republicans have initiated and shutting down the government because they don't want to negotiate on health care costs.
So thank you for correcting the record. It's not the saying that we voted
No.
for. But in addition to that, was this slush fund for senators who might have been involved with January 6th?
Right, they snuck that in.
Was that in
No, it
January
was not
23?
in it. It was not in, and I will just say, in all fairness, that was done by the Senate. They snuck it in, and apparently there are 2 violations attached to it. We could be losing about $8 million.
So, Chairman, let me just ask you this question. Do you think the House should have been here these last several weeks trying to pass appropriation bills?
No, we had to wait until the Senate acted on what we sent them. It took the Senate a long time, largely because our Democratic friends used the filibuster, which they claim they opposed, to force us to get to 60 votes.
Well,
we finally did, or they finally did in the Senate. So, no, there wasn't much for us to do
we have 9
until
more
they...
bills, don't we?
Can I finish my
Yeah.
answer? There wasn't anything for us to do until the Senate acted. And the only reason it didn't act more quickly, under their own rules, the filibuster requires them to get to 60. The Democrats withheld their votes. So, I mean, it's Democrats that have kept us out of session. We sent this over in plenty of time. It's not like it was a last-minute emergency thing. I think, as the chairwoman pointed out, we passed this on September the 19th, well ahead of the time, sent it to them, and they couldn't get anything done.
How many
They couldn't get anything done
how
because
many
no
appropriation
Democrats
bills do we
would cooperate.
How many
I'm
more
sorry.
appropriation bills do we have to pass in the House?
We have passed every one out of committee.
Right.
We have passed over 60% of the funding across the floor. We asked to have additional time. That time has largely been wasted. We in this bill actually passed 3 bills across the floor, if we're able to do that later this week. So we were making actually pretty friends. Difference is my friends on the other side decided they would add things to appropriations that are not in our jurisdiction or our expertise. Look, we don't deal with Medicaid. That was actually done in the big beautiful bill. We don't deal with that in Appropriations Committee. We do not deal with subsidies for Obamacare. They're not within our jurisdiction. So you added things that were
We're talking about 2
unconnected.
different things.
Can I finish my answer? You were added things that were unconnected to appropriations, and then were shocked when they weren't dealt with in appropriations bill. They belong somewhere else. It's my understanding both the Speaker and the Majority Leader, and frankly the President, have said, we'll negotiate with you when you reopen the government, but we're not going to sit here and negotiate after you shut down the government and threaten us. Nobody does that. You didn't do that when these
maybe
roles
you can
were-
answer the
Let me
question.
just say
How,
that-
how many appropriation bills? have
9
we-
are left to go.
have we-
9 are left to go.
We
We
have
could have
passed
done them
every
during.
Well, they are
one-
in committee,
Can
but they
I
haven't been
finish
to the
my
floor.
Answer
just asking
without
a question.
any interruption. We've passed
You just
every
interrupted
one
her.
across the out of committee. We've passed 3 across the floor. They collectively add up to over 60%. By the way, a far better record than the Democrats in the Senate had last year when they were in control. They didn't pass a single appropriations bill out. So, yeah, we're moving
Well,
pretty
listen,
well.
we have 9 bills to go.
Let me just ask.
We have
the que-
nine, but
The question, I just want to make sure, the question I asked that doesn't get answered is, how many do we have left to do on
We
the
have
floor?
9 bills to
And
do
could we
across
ha-
the floor
I'm
that
talking
are
to Mr.
about, that are
Loro.
about 40% of federal spending.
Madam Chair, I mean, I'm asking Mr. Loro a question, and we can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was directed to me. I
guess,
apologize.
Yeah, and I just want to know, the question I asked Mr. Cole, which he didn't want to answer, but I'll ask you, couldn't we have been doing stuff on the floor these
Absolutely.
last 8 weeks?
Absolutely. There has been so much wasted time, even in the process of the appropriations bills. And we did pass them in committee. And hours and hours and hours about poison pill riders that were done. These were unilaterally partisan bills that we were faced with. And when, not maybe, I don't know how many weeks ago, when the Four Corners, Chairman Cole, myself, Chairman Collins, and Ranking Member Murray, we sat down, the four of us together, and this is what we said we would do. We talked about these three bills, and we wanted to deal with the top lines, and we did. We got that, and we working through the bills. The staff worked through the bills. The second thing that we said, and there was consensus in that room, consensus, that what we would do is have a bipartisan continuing resolution. And that bipartisan continuing resolution would consider what Democratic priorities were and also deal with the power of the purse. We said that in that room. The next thing that we know, we were slammed with a partisan continuing resolution bill that did not take into consideration any Democratic priorities, nor did it address any of the issues of the power of the purse.
But let me just say, I think what Mr. Cole won't say, but I think, you know, I'm not sure he really believes this, but the bottom line is, I think in answer to the question of whether we should have been here doing other work, the answer is, of course, we should have been here doing other work. By not being here doesn't make things go faster. I have another question here, and that is that according to the Congressional Budget Office, extending the ACA enhanced premium tax credits for 1 year would cost between $25 and $35 billion. And I just want to know how you guys are able to find $4.5 trillion in tax cuts in your reconciliation bill, with more than $1.4 trillion in tax cuts for people with incomes over $500,000 per year, but choose not to extend these health care tax credits that working people rely on. I mean, that's 56 times more on tax cuts for the wealthy than it would have cost just to extend health care tax credits for a year. I mean, I think in your district, Mr. Cole, I think there's like 48,000 of your constituents rely on the ACA for their health care. And they're getting bills like my constituents are, like Mr. Laura's are. I have 37,000, you have 48,000 in your district, and in my district, Massachusetts, I've got 37,000. So kind of comparable. I mean, I'm getting calls from constituents who are, you know,
Crying.
out of their minds trying to figure out how they're going to pay for this. I mean, this week I received, this is one of them wrote me, this week I received the Massachusetts Health Connector open enrollment paperwork. The cost of the plan I'm currently on is going up by 62%. Another person said, I just received my letter and my monthly cost has gone from $1,287 to $3,026 for the next year. As a working family with a daughter who has an autoimmune disease, we're struggling. I'm working 50-plus hours just to pay the insurance. Another person, if I continue on the same plan I am on now, it will be 2.5 times more and be unaffordable. $15,000 plus a month is incredulous for one person's health premium. When I calculate my net income, not gross, it is beyond sustainable. I mean, I can go on and on and on. I know, but how do we reconcile the priorities that give us, you know, tax cuts for people who are well off, but when it comes to health care, and we can argue about whether the system can be better, I would prefer a different system. I would prefer Medicare for all. We've done it. We did a hearing when I was the chairman of the Rules Committee on that, and it was a very good hearing. But nonetheless, this is an immediate crisis. And I think people can't understand is how you can find in a nanosecond the money for tax cuts for people who are well off, but we can't find a way to just help middle-class working families get through this really difficult time. I mean, yeah, I mean...
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, the most immediate crisis in my district are the thousands of workers that you and your colleagues have put out of work that aren't getting a paycheck. That's the calls I get. I have thousands of them. They're the ones that keep the airplanes flying. They're the ones that do the National Weather Center.
No
They're
calls on
wondering
healthcare?
why they're not getting paid.
So you get no
when
calls
there
on
was
it?
legislation, we could have had these debates, we could have had these arguments. Why are they being held hostage? Why are you not willing to pay them? That's the calls I get.
So nobody calls you on
Why is the government
healthcare?
shutting down? Why do men and women in uniform who are deployed have to wonder whether or not their family at home is going to get a paycheck? That's on you. Look, this is the stuff you said you would never do.
So the 48
We would never shut down the government. We would never do
So
that.
of-
That's exactly what
of the
you've
fo-
done.
so of the
you're
48
putting thousands of people out of work.
of the
The
48,000
health care issue you're
No one-
talking about
no one-
is a subsidy that you passed on your own on top of other subsidies you said was COVID related. You said it would run out. We've said, okay, let's sit down and talk about fundamental changes here. But no, it's like we have to have our way. We have to have a guaranteed spending of $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years to exchange for you to pay people for 4 weeks in your original proposal.
So you-
we actually asked for 7.
You've tried over 50 times
no,
to repeal the
I've
Affordable
told you
Care
what
Act.
The most
Right.
immediate crisis in my
come
project
on,
you've
Tom.
created.
Well,
My people
so-
aren't getting paid
so no-
thanks to you and your colleagues.
So nobody in your district is complaining
I
to you
didn't
about the
say,
health care?
hey, people complain everywhere about everything.
we have a chance to
but
do something about
You asked me
that.
what the most important calls I get is, why am I not getting paid?
And we have a
Why
chance
am
to
I
do
being
something about
forcibly
this?
furloughed? There's important work for me to do.
Here's the thing, we have a chance to do something to help millions of people afford their health insurance, and what you're all telling me is you're not interested.
I thought that we had affordable health care. No,
we
I am
did.
interested.
When you
I
extend-
have
when
a
you guys
whole
ex-
series of them,
when you guys
but they
ex-
have nothing to do with
When-
appropriations
you got-
bill. They have nothing to do with the work of my committee. We
You-
do not do that at my
You
committee.
all extended.
But you're
you
willing
all
to
voted
hijack our
You all
committee.
voted to extend tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, make them permanent, but you could not extend these
you got-
for people. Mr. Laurel.
I'm just to say you got 13 members, 13 Republican members of the House who have said allowing the tax credits to lapse without a clear path forward, there is no clear path forward, would risk harm to those we represent. These are 13 members of the Republican conference who are scared to death that that's what's going to happen in their districts. You've got, in the chairman's district, a 60-year-old couple that makes $82,000 is going to see insurance premiums rise by $17,000 unless the Congress prevents it. Now, if that's okay, and you've got other members in the same situation, we can go down district by district and let you know what it is that is out there for this. And members who serve on the Appropriations Committee as well.
All
And it is
13 of those members voted to pay people.
Yeah.
They voted to keep the government open.
Well,
None of you did, except for one member in Maine who's now retiring because he's being beaten up so
the
badly
House and the
for
Senate.
paying
and the
people.
Madam Chair,
Exactly.
with all due respect.
Right.
When we debated the ACA, you controlled over an hour at a time. And you want to cut me off, that's fine. My constituents are getting screwed by what is happening here in this Congress or what is not happening in this Congress.
And every member-
they send me
member
here to
suffers.
fight for them because they're going to lose their health care or they're not going to be able to afford their health care. This is a big deal. And the indifference on this shown by the Republican majority in this House and by the guy in the White House who's remodeling bathrooms and building
$40 billion
Taj
to
Mahal.
Argentina.
I mean, it is ridiculous. But I'm just saying, I want to point for the historical record. I'm not getting the same courtesy that the chairwoman received when we did the ACA.
Just
And I-
listen to the American people. Last Tuesday, they made their voices heard on these issues. And you ought to take heed with what happened last Tuesday.
Mr. McGovern, what Mr. Cole has pointed out, and I've pointed out, and others have pointed out, this was put in place by the Democrats. The cutoff of the subsidies was put in place by you, and I think we have debated this point.
Why?
Ms. Fishbach,
Oh, I knew, okay. Well,
Ms. Fishbach, you're recognized.
It's useless.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just, before I go any further, I just want to recognize, I think you mentioned, it is Veterans Day, so I want to wish all of the veterans
Right.
happy Veterans Day.
We should pass the,
and all of us, I
Advance
think-
funding.
I'm speaking.
I know
Okay.
you are.
but I think
Thank you
that
very much.
you know, all of us probably to be here had to miss events that we were going to be at, and so I just wanted to say thank you for being here, and sorry that we couldn't attend those veterans events to commemorate Veterans Day for them. So just for that, but I am, as the discussion goes on, am amazed at this because this Democrat shutdown is all over a simple, clean, continuing resolution.
Not clean.
6 weeks. 6 weeks
Not
clean.
clean.
Well, the Democrat alternative, ma'am, was $1.5 trillion worth of spending. So this was a clean 6-week CR. We could have had all of those discussions you're so concerned about.
Not
We
clean.
could have been doing that. And the simple fact is, there was a vote on September 19th. If you voted yes, you voted yes to keep government open. You voted yes to pay people. You voted yes to keep things moving along. You voted yes to continue the appropriations. If you voted no, which the Democrats, with the exception of one, voted no,
voted yes.
that shut down government.
You voted yes
So,
to allow it to be
ma'am,
money was
ma'am.
stolen.
Ma'am, I am speaking.
I hear you.
Okay. And I just wanted to say, you know, there's questions about whether or not we were working, and with all due respect,
You're not working.
you were looking in the wrong place because all of us were working. I was in DC. You looked in the wrong place. I was meeting with constituents. I was in my district part of the time meeting with constituents. So to imply that we were on a vacation is ridiculous. It's just ludicrous because our constituents know we were working. I mean, my staff, you know, I came, met with constituents here, met with constituents in the district, and I think pretty much every single one of the Republicans did. And so I find it just ridiculous, and those kinds of statements are just pure not accurate. I'll say it that way. But Mr. Cole, Chair Cole, has pointed out that the appropriations process is so incredibly important. It is the way we should be doing things. The Appropriations Committee was doing it. Just needed 6 more weeks on that clean CR so that we could continue to do it. We're going to pass the 3 that are going to be on this bill. We have some more. We're going to continue to do that. But that's the way things should be happening here. It is absolutely, it's regular order. We should be doing it. And I just had a couple of questions just for clarification for Mr. Cole. And so does this bill provide funding for SNAP?
Yes, it does.
Did the bill that we voted on September 19th provide funding
Yes,
for
it
SNAP?
did.
Yes. So if we had voted way back in September 19th, we would have taken care of that. So
Worth noting,
Lack
too,
of
the majority
understanding.
of both houses voted for that. 55 senators voted for that, and obviously a majority in this body because it passed here. So it's just simply a Senate rule that's been perverted and taken advantage of. A majority of Congress has voted consistently to keep the government open while these other issues can be dealt with. It's Democrats that decided to shut the government down.
And like I pointed out, simple fact, September 19th, you can check the record. Who voted yes, who voted no? Yes to keep the government open. And I've pointed that out repeatedly over the last few weeks, while we've been shut down, because it's a simple fact. It's not the rhetoric. It just, you can prove it by checking the record. And Mr. Cole, I was going to ask you about if both of those bills, so the September 19th bill would have paid the troops. The September 19th bill would have kept the government open. The September 19th bill would have kept the funding for veterans. And so we had that, and they chose to shut the government down. So, but, and so this bill is going to reopen. We're going to get our troops paid. We're going to get the Capitol Police paid. We're going to do what we need to. We're going to get back pay. We're going to, for the federal workers, and we are going to make sure that folks get their SNAP benefits. And so I appreciate that this has come forward, and so I would ask the other side to join us in opening the government back up so then we can have these discussions that you've been so concerned about, that you want to make sure it gets done. And I don't think that the proposals that you have actually solve the issue of increased health care insurance. It doesn't do it. We need to have more in-depth discussions about what's really going on about it. And so please join us in opening the government. And with that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Now recognize Ms. Scanlon for her time of questioning.
Thank you. I would first yield to Mr. McGovern.
Yeah, we are happy to join with you. We want the government open. We just don't want millions of people to get screwed over on their health care insurance. So if you join with us, this is a crisis, by the way, that's right now. It's not 3 months from now or 6 months from now.
Right.
It's right now. People have gotten their bills. People are making decisions whether they're going to forego their health care. So that is it. And the idea that we can't get well, there are 13 Republicans that at least have said that they support us on extending the benefits. We'll see whether, they did it for show or whether it's for real. But I think if you let the House work its will, I think a majority of Democrats or Republicans would vote to extend that tax credit. And millions of people won't lose their health care, won't get screwed over because of the indifference and the inaction of this Congress. You found it. You found the time. You found it acceptable to extend the expiring tax cuts for multimillionaires and billionaires, but you couldn't find it within your heart to extend this. So we're happy to join with you, but join with us too. If you want our votes, then we want to help working people afford their health insurance. I yield back to Ms. Scanlon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. As we're convening here for the first time in months, our nation's healthcare.
At his Mar-a-Lago club. So you see these emails come out, you saw Mike respond and say, the name that was redacted in that initial email that you just read is Virginia Giuffre, is one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent accusers and survivors. So her family has been accused of people who are speaking out on her behalf and for advocacy in the last several months since then. We hear that the situation questions the White House, of course, is colleagues on the danger of Washington with that new House Democrat, Ashley Geraldo, is set to be sworn in by House Speaker Mike Johnson this afternoon. She's expected to vote on that discharge issue, consider what would require the Justice Department to release the emails they have on Jeffrey Epstein. These emails that are coming out today are because the House Oversight Committee subpoenaed Jeffrey Epstein's estate and they handed it over to Congress. Yeah, this is with my colleagues, Galen Poland, Santa Rabinowitz, and Elena Tree. We are told that the White House is trying to meet with Republican Congressmember Lauren Boebert. She is one of the Republicans who has voiced support for that discharge petition. There's only a handful of Republicans who have done so. And we are told that top officials, including the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, and the FBI Director Kash Patel were all trying to meet with Lauren Boebert in order to try to sway her position on that discharge petition, given Nancy Mace in terms of voting for that, something that could happen, of course, as soon as we see Adelina Gohal was sworn in. What's not clear is if those efforts by the White House have been successful or where that's going, but it does speak to the fact that the White House, how they're viewing this, that they clearly do not want that discharge petition to go through or to pass, and there's questions of what would happen if it did pass the House, what the Senate would do with it, and of course, how the White House and the Justice Department would respond to that. Based on the numbers they have right now, yes, it would. Unless maybe any of the other Republicans cross the aisles and they would get to vote for it. Even if all Democrats stick together and Adelina Gohal is that vote, if they do not have Lauren Boebert's vote, they would not have the 218 based on the math that we last had when, of course, all this was happening and the House was sent up early for its recess. Those were the latest numbers. As you've seen, survivors of Jeffrey Epstein go up to Capitol Hill and meet the Republicans and meet the lawmakers and talk about their views on this. And so Lauren Boebert was one of those in favor. The last we know, she still is in favor of that. Whether or not the White House meeting with those top senior officials would change her mind, that would be soon to see beyond. Yeah, obviously they're responding to the release of the emails. They're saying this is Democrats trying to smear the by putting the word redacted in that email where they said they did not want to identify who we now know to be Virginia Giuffre. They were saying they were protecting her identity because she was a victim of Jeffrey Epstein. And obviously we'll see what Caroline Levitt has to say when she goes in there to agree with Robin Carolyn.
Yeah, apparently we have to keep the door open.
It feels great. I'm totally happy with it.
You could ask them.
This is why
I think I will. Will ya?
That was always something. And sweet potato.
Yeah. It was. She does. It's very sweet. She does. She all does. Well, first one, she has on these parties. She sat down.
$1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid that were rammed through in the big ugly bill this summer, the White House's unilateral cuts to congressionally approved spending for NIH, medical research, including pediatric cancer, and now the Republican refusal to extend the ACA tax credits that help millions of Americans afford their health insurance. And they're already seeing these health insurance premiums go up. As Mr. McGovern said, this is not something that can wait because families are enrolling now for next year. And the Republicans have refused to address this issue all year, not just since the shutdown occurred. They've refused to address it at all. And none of this is an accident. It's all by choice. Just like it was a choice by President Trump to defund SNAP benefits this month for the first time in history. For more than 60 years, through recessions, natural disasters, and even previous shutdowns, and including previous shutdowns under this president, the federal government has never missed a SNAP payment until now.
Really egregious.
What would happen when this system were to restore where we would?
We really need you here. So, yeah, I mean, these numbers are a lot more complex than simple, which I think is the point you're making, than just stating a number and saying these people are all driven out. That's just not the case.
Well, and importantly, I think if you go from that to then the second area of concern, which we're talking about with respect to just the shutdown generally, true or false, on September 19th, we passed legislation that would have continued funding at current levels through November 20th.
That's true.
And on October 1st, the government entered shutdown because the Senate, by virtue of decisions by Senate Democrats, refused to take up and pass that bill, which undeniably would have continued to fund government at the current level beginning October 1 through November 20th. And instead, we entered a shutdown.
That's correct, although I always think it's important to note 55 senators, majority of the Senate, did actually vote to keep the government open.
And so important for the American people to understand that was a choice. And so I think when we talk about a shutdown, the question is why? Why? Why do it? Because here we are, and we've got legislation in front of us that Democrats have now supported in the Senate that return us effectively to the status quo ante, where we're going to have government funded out to another now date certain, now extended into January, because we're now into November, so we had to extend the date. We managed to move 3 appropriations bills through some degree of regular order, 3 bills in the House and the Senate. But by virtue of now passing this bill, we're going to restore where we would have been had we just done our work on October 1. So the question is, what was the last 45 days all about? Could it have been potentially the intervening political elections? Could that possibly have been the cynical motivations of the, not right now, I won't.
I was going to ask you a question.
Could it have possibly been the cynical motivations of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle? Just a rhetorical question that I'll leave floating out there to say, what were the reasons? We know why. Because our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have nothing to run on. And our colleagues on the other side of the aisle want something desperately to run on, so they're trying to manufacture a healthcare crisis that they created. That's the actual truth. And with respect to health care, the question that I would ask is this: should we be putting forward legislation that will continue to fund the insurance companies at the level they're currently getting, where 85% of their revenues are coming from the federal government? Because that's what's happening. Or that $35 billion are going to insurance companies last year to go to people that weren't even using their plans. Is that what we should be doing? Is that the healthcare system that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are saying that must be addressed by virtue of subsidies to insurance companies? Because President Trump had it right last week when he said, well, if you're going to do these subsidies, which is not how we would prefer to do business, then shouldn't it go to the American people to be able to go into a market and go be able to get the doctor of his or her choice, or get direct primary care, or be able to figure out how to take care of their family rather than call an insurance bureaucrat who's pocketing the money through a system that our colleagues designed and broke, and for which not one single Republican ever voted, including the subsidies that no Republican voted for, that were created to be temporary by our colleagues' own voice, They were to be temporary during COVID. And we are now to extend the very subsidies that my colleagues are laying bare, the broken healthcare system that they created. I remember all too well in 2013 being on the floor of the Senate with Ted Cruz when we were raising the questions of what would happen when this system were implemented. Because the debate then was whether we should fund the implementation of a system that would end up bankrupting the average American family, as this system has done.
But you shut down,
What I'm talking about is the reason. I'm talking about the reason that one would go to the Senate floor and say maybe we shouldn't do the very thing that right now is causing the American people pain.
15 years.
Because we talk about the constituents who are having pain. Yeah. How about my constituent who died last year, who couldn't go to MD Anderson because Obamacare doesn't cover it? Is that coverage? Is that the kind of health care system that people deserve? While insurance companies are pocketing extraordinary profits, off the charts
15 years
profits.
and you haven't come up with a plan for health insurance.
And health insurance,
15 years.
health insurance executives are minting money.
Oh, God.
Minting money on the back of dollars coming from federal taxpayers and the federal government. And then our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have the temerity to come here and complain about the system they broke. That's what we're actually dealing with here.
It's about repeal of the Affordable Care Act. That's what this is all about.
Or the extent to which you've got
With no replacement.
Is it our time? The extent to which we are here because our colleagues know full well that this was a political exercise. To the chairman, we heard about SNAP. True or false, if we pass this legislation, will SNAP benefits proceed immediately?
Correct.
They could proceed.
So if we pass this legislation tomorrow, SNAP funding will continue immediately.
Correct.
While our friends at the other end of Pennsylvania Avenue are trying to manage the funding of government, while our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have shut it down.
They're at
Correct?
the Supreme Court trying to end that.
Mr. Chairman, one last question. So our colleague brought up the big, beautiful bill. When we created and set out the big, beautiful bill, and we put into it components to deal with border security and defense, where we had $150 billion for each in that legislation, was that not beneficial for the executive branch to manage through such a moment as this, where our colleagues have shut down the government and they've now had additional flexibility with respect to dollars? Not all, it's not appropriations, I realize that, but they had additional flexibility to manage through it so that we could continue to secure the border and secure to defend the nation.
I wouldn't presume to speak for the administration, but that would be my opinion, that has given them the ability to make sure that we've been able to pay our troops twice, which would not have happened had they not had that flexibility and the president not made some tough decisions. So, yeah, I point out, I know everybody here is concerned about SNAP and WIC, and the president directed additional resources into those programs to the extent that he could during a government shutdown. So, I mean, the president's done everything he can to mitigate.
As always, but I do have the FBI director with me here, Kash Patel. You all know him well, and he's here to provide an update for you all with respect to China. As you know, President Trump had a very successful meeting on his trip to Asia with President Xi, where they discussed the need for China to crack down on fentanyl production and distribution, which ultimately makes its way here to the United States of America. And the FBI director recently traveled to China following President Trump's meeting to meet with his counterpart in Beijing. And he has a really positive announcement for the American people to share. So the president wanted me to bring the FBI director out to share that with all of you today. So Kash, please, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Caroline. As Caroline mentioned, we have some tremendous news thanks to President Donald J. Trump once again for the American people. As soon as the President of the United States took office, he issued a mandate to rid America of the scourge that is fentanyl, killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. Thanks to his leadership and direct engagements with China, we set up a framework to execute the mission 8 months ago. Attorney General Bondi immediately thereafter took steps to engage her counterpart in China at the Ministry of Public Security. Pursuant to their direct discussions, as the FBI director designated to run counterpoint on this, along with the Secretary of State Rubio and Ambassador Perdue and the team here at the White House, we set forward a path to implement the policy needed to crush the plague of fentanyl. Deputy Attorney General Blanche and our teams have been hard at work ever since, ultimately culminating in my trip to Beijing last week. This was only possible due to President Trump's historic engagement with President Xi just a few short weeks ago that set the stage for today's announcement. At that meeting, the leaders reached an agreement. But just to put this in frame for the American people, a reminder here that nearly 100,000 people died of fentanyl overdoses just last year alone. Here, this year, under this president, the FBI has seized 1,900 kilograms of fentanyl so far. That is a 31% increase from the same time period last year. To put it in perspective, that's enough fentanyl to kill 127 million Americans. Fentanyl precursors are what makes up fentanyl. While we, the interagency, the Department of Justice, have been fighting hard to seize and stop drug traffickers, we must attack fentanyl precursors, the ingredients necessary to make this lethal drug. That was the sole purpose of my trip to China, to eliminate these precursors. And if successful, we would suffocate the drug trafficking organization's ability to manufacture fentanyl in places like Mexico. This was the first time an FBI director has been to China in over a decade and received the audience with his counterpart to address this matter directly. And again, thanks to President Trump's direct engagement with President Xi, the government of China committed fully to my engagement there on the ground in Beijing at a level never seen before. While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug. Effective immediately, essentially, President Trump has shut off the pipeline that creates fentanyl that kills tens of thousands of Americans. These substances are now banned, and they will no longer be utilized by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations or any other DTOs around the world to make this drug. This historic achievement has saved tens of thousands of lives. This historic achievement would not have been possible without the tremendous team of President Trump, the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Ambassador Perdue in China, whose ground-level engagements were imperative to achieving this result. This is yet another example of how President Trump defends the American people, provides security for the American people, and puts the American people first. This is a historic first-in-its-kind achievement by any president to stop the scourge of fentanyl, and it should be championed by every single American. This achievement will save lives. We are thankful for President Trump's steadfast leadership, and this FBI will fearlessly follow in his footsteps to ensure that this mission of safeguarding the American public is achieved every single day. Thank you. Thanks, Caroline.
Cash. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you again, Director Patel. Before we get going, I do have one quick scheduling announcement. Tomorrow, President Trump will be joined by the First Lady in the East Room for an executive order signing aimed at expanding opportunities for education, career development, housing, and other resources for young people transitioning from foster care to adulthood. This is part of the First Lady's Fostering the Future efforts, which are a Be Best initiative. In other news, the Democrats dragged on the government shutdown for 43 days, the longest shutdown in U.S. history. But tonight, thanks to Republicans, the White House is very hopeful that this shutdown is going to come to an end. The damage caused by the Democrats with this reckless government shutdown cannot be forgotten. It is entirely the fault of the Democrat Party. Just look at the vote count. Hundreds of thousands of federal employees have missed their paychecks. Tens of billions in wages and benefits were withheld, impacting vulnerable families. Millions of low-income Americans missed their SNAP benefits. Nearly 20,000 flights at airports across the country were delayed due to staffing shortages, causing Americans to miss family events, vacations, and work obligations. According to Airlines for America, an estimated 5.2 million travelers have had their flights disrupted over the course of the Democrat shutdown. And our economy has lost billions and billions of dollars in economic activity over the course of this shutdown, hurting consumer sentiment and crushing the travel and hospitality industries. According to a CBO estimate, the Democrat shutdown could end up decreasing fourth quarter economic growth by 2 whole percentage points. The Democrat shutdown made it extraordinarily difficult for economists, investors, and policymakers at the Federal Reserve to receive critical government data. The Democrats may have permanently damaged the federal statistical system, with October CPI and jobs reports likely never being released. And all of that economic data released will be permanently impaired, leaving our policymakers at the Fed flying blind at a critical period. It's hard to recap all of this without asking a simple question: why? Why have the Democrats put the American people through this pain for 43 days in a row? And it feels like Groundhog Day being up here again talking about this Democrat shutdown. And the answer to that question is pure partisan politics. They started this shutdown with a ridiculous demand to force taxpayer-funded healthcare benefits to illegal aliens who broke into our country. Even after it was clear President Trump and Republicans would never force American taxpayers to pay for free health care for illegals. In fact, President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill fixed that problem. The Democrats kept dragging this reckless government shutdown on for weeks longer to boost their turnout in an election, perhaps one may guess. That's because the Democrats are totally captured by their far left-wing base, who only care about attacking President Trump, even if it means hurting innocent Americans in our country. The Democrats' weakness and their unwillingness to buck the fringe members of their party dragged this harmful shutdown on for 7 weeks and inflicted massive pain onto the American public. But let's be clear, the clean CR being voted on today in the House of Representatives that will lead to the reopening of the federal government is what President Trump and Republicans have supported from day one. Our troops, air traffic controllers, and federal employees will be back to receiving their regular paychecks. Families in need will get back to receiving their food purchasing assistance, and the people's government will soon be back open for business. President Trump looks forward to finally ending this devastating Democrat shutdown with his signature, and we hope that signing will take place later tonight. On another matter, I want to address the affordability issue that's received a great deal of media attention this past week, which is ironic because it didn't receive that much attention when Joe Biden was here and inflation was at a record high 9%, the worst inflation crisis in modern American history. And President Trump won a landslide election in part to address the affordability issues created by Joe Biden and the Democrats. And that's exactly what President Trump has done since day one of his administration. Since the first day in office and every day since, the Trump administration has taken aggressive action to fix the Biden-created cost of living issues. The notion that the same Democrats who just shut down the federal government to sabotage our economy, rob people of their paychecks, and also helped Joe Biden ratchet up inflation to 9%, are now suddenly affordability champions, that notion is completely absurd. And it's something only the liberal media would have the gall to push. But the reality is that President Trump and his administration have done so much to lower prices and increase the economic prosperity of the American people. And this president and his team of amazing economic advisors are going to keep working on this issue every single day. In less than 10 short months, President Trump signed the largest middle-class tax cuts in American history, including no tax on tips, overtime, and Social Security, which will guarantee that next year Americans are going to put more money back into their pockets. The president has completely unleashed American energy dominance to help bring gasoline prices to the lowest in 5 years, and we expect them to continue to decrease. And it has also lowered energy costs overall. There is more work to do, but again, the president's deregulatory and pro-American energy agenda is absolutely going to continue to drive down prices. This formula worked in the president's first term, and we expect that it's going to work again. And this is key because we know energy costs are the #1 driver of inflation. Again, just look at what Joe Biden did to our energy industry over the past 4 years of his administration, and look at what happened to inflation as a result. Everything became more expensive. To lower prescription drug prices and healthcare costs, the president has been working around the clock on this issue. He is obsessed with negotiating these good deals on behalf of the American people to bring down pharmaceutical costs and drug costs for Americans, and he has done so on a number of fronts. You have seen him discuss that in the Oval Office several times. To fuel small businesses, lower their costs, and incentivize hiring, the Trump administration has already cut 30 unnecessary regulations for every new one on the books, which we know will save employers and small businesses across the country thousands of dollars in regulatory burdens. All of these pro-Trump policies are working, and they will continue to work. Wages are rising at the fastest pace of the start of a presidential administration in 60 years. The cost of the typical new mortgage is down by nearly $3,000 per year. There's much work to do, and this administration will continue to do it. But President Trump has already made great progress in cleaning up the economic disaster that was created by Joe Biden. With that, I will take your questions today, and in our new media seat, we have Bev Turner, who works for a new outlet, a UK outlet, but based here in Washington, D.C., GB News. Bev, thank you for being here today. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Caroline. So the clock is ticking on the Friday deadline by which the BBC must retract and apologise for their malicious edit of the president in a documentary shown last year. The recently resigned Director General of the BBC yesterday described the organisation as the very best of society and blamed the enemies of the BBC for this outcome. Also yesterday, a senior government minister launched a fierce defence of the channel in the House of Commons, saying that the broadcaster remains a light on the hill for people all over the world. So, does the president feel that the network is taking this situation seriously? Does he believe that they've shown sufficient regret? Does this strain the relationship between the president and the prime minister? And given that the organisation is publicly funded, is the president prepared to bankrupt the BBC in his pursuit of truth and justice?
Well, thank you, Bev. There's a lot of questions in one there. I will say I know the president has a very good relationship with Prime Minister Starmer. You have been there, you've seen them in their interactions, you've questioned both leaders in your time joining us when we've gone to the United Kingdom a few different times now. However, he has always been very frank when he disagrees with leaders, even whom he has a good relationship with. And the BBC, being a fair news organization, is definitely an outlet I think these two leaders would disagree. The president has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain. And I think that the president was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news, and he rightfully dubbed that term many years ago, and this is a classic example of that. We see it in the United States all the time. We see it now in the United Kingdom. As you know, the president's external legal counsel has filed a lawsuit against the BBC. We expect that to continue, and whether they apologize or not is up to them. Thanks for being here, Bev. Ouija.
Thank you, Caroline.
Sure.
I have your statement about the new Epstein emails that have been released by House Democrats. Separate from why you believe the emails were made public, can you address their substance? Did the president ever spend hours at Jeffrey Epstein's house with a victim?
These emails prove absolutely nothing other than the fact that President Trump did nothing wrong. And what President Trump has always said is that he was from Palm Beach, and so was Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was a member at Mar-a-Lago until President Trump kicked him out because Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile and he was a creep. And this email you refer to with the name of a victim that was unredacted now and has since been reported on in this room, so I will go ahead and say it, Virginia Giuffre. And it was CBS's own reporting, Ouija, that recently wrote that Miss Giuffre maintained, and God rest her soul, that she maintained that there was nothing inappropriate she ever witnessed, that President Trump was always extremely professional and friendly to her. And so I think it's a question worth asking the Democrat Party, and you should all go ask them after this briefing, of why they chose to redact that name of a victim who has already publicly made statements about her relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is unfortunately no longer with us. Mary.
Thank you, Kelly. 2 questions on this. In the interest of transparency, why not just go ahead, release the full files on Epstein, get this all over with?
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people. We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee. That's part of the reason you are seeing these documents that were released today, because of the House Oversight Committee's and Republicans' efforts to get these out to the public. This administration also moved, the Department of Justice also moved to unseal grand jury testimony, which we know, unfortunately, a judge declined those requests. So this administration has done more than any, and it just shows how this is truly a manufactured hoax by the Democrat Party. For now, they're talking about it all of a sudden because President Trump is in the Oval Office. But when Joe Biden was sitting in there, the Democrats never brought this up. This wasn't an issue that they cared about because they actually don't care about the victims in these cases. They care about trying to score political points against President Trump, as we have, of course, seen with this government shutdown. And this entire thing, again, it's not a coincidence to the American people at home. There are no coincidences in Washington, D.C. And it is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government. This is another distraction campaign by the Democrat and the liberal media, and it's why I'm being asked questions about Epstein instead of the government reopening because of Republicans and President Trump.
But given your
Reagan.
interest in transparency, Caroline, why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency? Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns? That's a defining factor of transparency. Having discussions with members of Congress about various issues, and I'm not going to detail conversations that took place in the Situation Room in the press briefing room. Reagan.
I have a question about the government shutdown.
Thank you.
The Middle East.
I'm glad someone does.
First, on the government shutdown, the shutdown deal reverses the administration's reps, and it also prohibits until the end of January. I'm wondering if the president had input on this element of the deal, and if he's at all disappointed that's going to reverse the downsizing of federal government that they did during the shutdown.
I mean, look, I think it's about 6,000 workers total. When you look at that in comparison to the reduction in the federal workforce that this administration has done since January to get rid of the waste, the fraud, the abuse, and to reduce the size of our federal bureaucracy, we've done a lot of great work on that front, and we will continue to. But obviously, the president's main priority was to reopen the federal government and get people back to work, and that's what this deal accomplishes.
There's been reports in Israeli media that the U.S. is considering building a temporary military base on the Gaza border. Can you confirm these reports?
So I had a conversation directly with the reporter who wrote this article, and this article was based on a single piece of paper, an inquiry that somebody in the Department of Navy made about an idea that may happen in the future. And this reporter deemed that as an official plan and ran with a story that the United States is looking into it. I checked with the highest levels of the United States federal government. This is not something the United States is interested in being engaged in. It's not something we are currently involved in right now that we will be funding. And the president has been very clear he doesn't want to see boots on the ground with respect to what's happening in the Middle East. We've made great peace. We've made great progress with the peace plan in Gaza, and we want to continue to see that move forward. But I put a comment in that story for a reason. And sometimes we see reporters take a piece of paper like this and just deem it as official policy, and sometimes that misleads people a little bit. Sure.
There's been a question about UK intelligence sharing regarding the drunk interdictions involving Venezuelan boats. How will that affect the U.S. military operation? There's been a lot of discussion about the high caliber of the intelligence that has been provided before any of these military actions have taken place.
I've seen that report. Oh, hello. I've seen that report. I'm familiar with the reporting, but we don't comment on intelligence matters, classified intelligence matters, as you know. As for the Trump administration's position on our narco-terrorist campaign in the Caribbean, it is going to continue. and the president has made it very clear he's not going to allow terrorists to bring illegal drugs that kill American citizens into our great country. Sure, John. I'll go to John and then Zolan. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Trump has talked about sending out $2,000 checks to U.S. citizens. Earlier this year, he also talked about sending a Doge dividend. That didn't materialize. Should U.S. Citizens expect the $2,000 proposal? Is the White House committed to making that happen?
The White House is committed to making that happen, yes, and we are currently exploring all legal options to get that done. I don't have a timeline for you or any further details, but I can confirm for you that the president made it clear he wants to make it happen, and so his team of economic advisors are looking into it, and when we have an update, we'll provide one. Solon.
You said at the top that one of the costs of the government shutdown was that people missed their SNAP benefits. Can you explain then why the administration went to court to fight the funding of food stamps?
So recipients missed their SNAP benefits because the Democrats shut the government down, and they forced the administration to tap into a contingency fund that did not even fund the full entirety of this program. And so then you had an unhinged judge who was trying to dictate from the bench what the executive branch has to pay for and where that money has to come from. That is judicial overreach at its finest, and so that's why the administration pushed back on that. We can't have the judicial branch telling the executive branch that we need to rob the Children Nutrition Fund, which is what this judge was trying to do, to pay for SNAP benefits. That's completely inappropriate and it's unconstitutional, and we've been proven right with that legal argument. But now the good news is, again, thanks to Republicans and in several hours, President Trump, the government is going to be reopened, and SNAP recipients are going to receive their full benefits, which is what President Trump has always wanted to do. Stephen.
Why also did you need the judicial process for that? I mean, during this shutdown, didn't the administration have a responsibility to tap into any of those reserves to ensure that essentially
We
poor
did.
people
We did tap into it. We did tap into the contingency fund. And then the judge told us, no, you have to get more money from a children's nutrition fund. And we felt that was judicial overreach. You shouldn't tell the president which fund he has to rob because the Democrats are holding the country hostage by shutting down the federal government. Stephen, go
as
ahead.
well, if the president is considering a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell?
Again, he's answered this repeatedly. It's not something he's talking about or even thinking about at this moment in time. I can assure you of that. Stephen.
Caroline, I've got two questions about New York for you.
Sure.
First,
You always do.
Mayor-elect
On brand for the New York Post.
Mayor-elect Mamdani, he said that he plans to reach out to President Trump and that, quote, this is a relationship that will be critical. Does the White House have a response to this planned outreach?
It's the first time I'm hearing of it. I'll let the president respond himself to that comment by Mr. Mamdani.
My second question, Jack Schlossberg, the grandson of President Kennedy, announced today that he's running for Congress. He, in the recent past, has referred to his uncle, the HHS secretary, as, quote, a rabid dog, and he has said that the Trump administration is, quote, the most corrupt in American history. Does the White House have a comment on this sort of comment from a rising star in the Democratic Party?
I don't even think such ridiculous comments are worth responding to. Obviously, those things are not true. And Secretary Kennedy is doing a phenomenal job bringing transparency and the gold standard of science back to our healthcare system. Eamon.
Thank you, Caroline. The president's hosting a number of Wall Street CEOs for dinner tonight here at the White House. Can you give us the names of the CEOs who are going to be here and give us a sense of what the president's message to Wall Street is going to be tonight?
I don't have a full list for you in front of me, Eamon. I know you've reported on some names, and we've helped you navigate whether those names were truthful or false. But I know the president actually plans to bring some of you into the dinner tonight, so you'll see for yourself in several hours if that's okay with you.
And there's been some reporting that the White House is frustrated with Bill Pulte and the rollout of this proposal for a 50-year mortgage. Can you tell us if the White House is frustrated with that rollout and if the White House still supports the idea of a 50-year mortgage for Americans?
This is a proposal that the president himself has commented on. I would refer you to the president's statements, and it's something that the administration is discussing and seriously looking into. Sure. Danny, and then go ahead.
Thank you. Some Democratic members of Congress have invited Britain's former Prince Andrew to testify on the Epstein scandal. I was just wondering if President Trump thinks that former Prince Andrew should indeed come and testify to Congress on that.
I haven't spoken to him about that specific matter, but I can ask him and get back to you.
On the government shutdown, the president and House Republicans had made clear they were not going to negotiate health care strategy or policy while the government was shut down. Now, assuming that it reopens tonight, is the president intending to invite any Democrats over to have negotiations over these subsidies or any other plan to bring down the cost of health insurance?
I will just add that, as you pointed out, the Democrats were holding our country hostage to try to negotiate on a healthcare system that they created. Obamacare, as it's famously called, is a system the Democrats created. It is a broken system. It has driven up healthcare costs dramatically in this country. And now they shut the government down to try to fix that system they broke. It doesn't make any sense to us, which is why the president said that's a completely untenable position. However, once the government reopens, the president, as he's always maintained, is absolutely open to having conversations about healthcare. And I think you'll see the president putting forth some really good policy proposals the Democrats should take very seriously to fix, again, the system that they broke. You can't trust the same people who broke the system to fix it, and so the American people will continue to hear from the president on this issue.
Follow up on the question about the $2,000 payments off tariff revenue. The president had also talked about using tariffs to bring down the national debt. Would this be in lieu of that? Like, this is now the new way to maybe to use that tariff revenue?
No, the president put out a statement on this clarifying he wants to do both things with the tariff revenue that he's bringing into this country. Trillions of dollars are expected to continue to pour in, and it's part of the reason that the Supreme Court case is so vital for our country's future, to restore our manufacturing industry in this country, to protect our national security, to continue to allow the president to use tariffs as leverage to negotiate economic deals that, again, are good for our national security. And that revenue can then be used for various reasons, to pay down our debt and also perhaps to give these rebate checks back to Americans, which, again, the White House is exploring the legal options of how we can get that done. Catherine, go ahead.
Caroline, Viktor Orban said this week that President Trump has promised Hungary some kind of financial shield. Do you have any details on how that will be structured or what that would look like?
I don't, but I'm happy to check with the National Security Council and get back to you.
One more. You recently said you'd check with President Trump about why he needs to get an MRI on his recent trip to Walter Reed. Do you have any more detail on that?
I do, and I'm glad you asked. As stated in the memo provided on October 10th, President Trump received advanced imaging at Walter Reed Medical Center as part of his routine physical examination. The full results were reviewed by attending radiologists and consultants, and all agreed that President Trump remains in exceptional physical health, which I know all of you will see with your own eyes later this evening when he opens up his dinner to the press, and perhaps you will see him when he signs the bill to reopen the federal government. So stay tuned on plans for that. Thank you, everyone.
have done. They haven't been able to do it in the House. I do stress this is a Senate deal. It's been the minority position in both chambers. But I appreciate what the administration's done to try and make sure the people that needed help got it, the people that deserved to get paid did get paid insofar as they could do it. But yeah, again, they can't do it indefinitely, and they can't do it for everyone.
Mr. Roy?
I think, Chairman, one last point that I want for the record. The Obamacare 2026 premiums, there's a great report that puts out that shows that only 3.3% of those premiums are affected at all by the COVID credits, that 97% of the premiums in 2026 will continue to flow as normal, and I'd like to insert that in the record. Thank you.
Mr. Roy.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you. I just have to start. Chairman Cole, I have a number of probing questions, but before I ask you some questions, I have to address some of the comments made by the gentleman from Texas. I'm just going to read a quote. And I do this because I actually don't think I could find a quote like this from Chairman Cole. So in some respects, although I disagree with much of his testimony, but he certainly has more clean hands than some of my other colleagues. Quote, let's not fund a government that's going to be exacting tyranny over our American brothers and sisters. Full length of the interview is available here, and some key quotes are below. This is from the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Roy's website, November of 2021. Should any Republican vote to fund an executive branch? In other words, should Article 1 Congress, which has the power of the purse as the founders gave us, should we give any dollars to the executive branch for President Biden to issue unconstitutional and unlawful mandates that are causing people to have to choose between their livelihoods and getting a vaccine which they don't want? Let's stand united. Let's not do what these 13 Republicans did last Friday and go side with Nancy Pelosi. Let's not fund a government that's going to be exacting tyranny over our American brothers and sisters. This is from Mr. Roy. Spare me. Hold on. No, Mr. Roy, it's my time. It's my time. You certainly made that clear with the chairwoman. Spare us. Mr. Cole, perhaps, I think, as I said, can have some clean hands to talk to us about this particular set of circumstances we find ourselves in. You cannot. There might be other colleagues of yours, I think, who might share Mr. Cole's worldview, but I don't know. I thought I've heard everything in Congress, but to hear my colleague from Texas, his indignation about the government shutdown as he instigated and tried to instigate shutdown after shutdown just 3 years ago, 4 years ago. This isn't distant memory. In any event, I digress. Mr. Cole, how many days has the House of Representatives been in session since August 3rd?
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
12 days sound about right?
Something like that.
I can represent to you that the House, since August 3rd, has been in session for a total of 12 days. I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Bannon. I suspect you are. Yes?
Never met him.
Never met him. You know of him.
If you read the newspapers, you know of him.
Yeah, I don't. It's not a trick question. You know Steve Bannon exists.
No,
all right.
sir, I know who he is.
Okay, there was a report recently where Steve Bannon compared the U.S. Congress under Speaker Johnson to the Duma, allegedly. You think that's an apt comparison?
No, I don't.
No. Would it surprise you to know that the Duma has been in session longer this fall than the United States House of Representatives?
I don't know that the Duma sessions make very much difference.
Well, I'm not so sure they make much difference here, given the way in which Republicans are capitulating to every demand that President Trump makes. I think it is shameful that the House has been in session for 12 days since August 3rd. 54 days out of session. You cannot possibly, Chairman, you've been in Congress for some time. You can't possibly defend a 54-day recess, the second longest recess in the modern history of the Congress. You would defend that?
You should probably direct that sentiment toward the United States Senate.
The Senate decides when the House is in session?
No, if you'll let me finish my
Well, no,
point.
because I don't.
My point is, we sent a bill in plenty of time over to the Senate to keep the government open functioning. All these other issues you're concerned about could be addressed, could be debated.
Why not pass these bills?
Whatever.
Why not consider the bills on the floor? They're approach
we're
bills.
waiting for the Senate to get back.
Why wait?
The Senate has now finally acted.
Okay, Mr. Cole,
wasn't the Republicans that kept it from acting?
I understand.
Okay,
You said that
that's
in
my
response
concern.
to Mr. McGovern. My question is, and this was what I think he was trying to glean from both you and the ranking member, there are plenty of appropriation bills that were passed out of committee. The House could have met the last week of September, any week in October, last week, yesterday, any time over the last 54 days. The House could be convened to consider these appropriation bills. John Thune doesn't get to decide when the House of Representatives is in session. Mike Johnson does. And I'm trying to understand from you why you've decided to take this position.
I
that
don't
essentially,
make these decisions.
I'll finish and then I'll let you answer.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Why you've
I thought
taken
you
this
had.
position that the House should effectively stay out of session. I mean, I guess this is your position, that if the government is shut down, the House of Representatives should not convene. Is that your position?
If we can open it by ourselves, which we had done.
Sure.
We had passed legislation, clean legislation, to keep the government open.
You've said that.
It went to the United States Senate, and you wait until they send you something back.
And do nothing else. That's my point. Do you know how many bills have passed out of committee this year that are sitting downstairs at the floor, the desk in the House? 150. 150 bills that have passed. Many of your colleagues here on the Republican side of the aisle, they have passed bills out of committee, along with bills that I've passed on veterans' health care, on issues of foreign policy, you name it. The House has refused to consider any of those for the last 54 days. I'm trying to understand why. Why not just say to the Speaker in October, you know what?
Call us back.
Speaker Johnson, it's time to bring the House back. We'll wait. You know, the Senate, you're right. The Senate's considering the bills that we sent them. They're considering the CR that you mentioned, right? That you've made clear, you passed it. I get it. But while we're waiting, maybe we ought to consider other matters, including the appropriation bills that you are so proud of that you moved out of your committee.
I am proud of them. I would be much happier if the Senate would just open the government
But you don't
and
have
we
to
could
wait
proceed.
for them. I don't understand.
Look,
I mean, honestly, I think I've got an answer to that question. I think you've answered it. And I
Okay.
think the answer is effectively that John Thune is in charge of the House calendar from here on out. That basically the position is, I mean, Mike Johnson has given his gavel. I thought he gave, I didn't ask a question, Mr. Cole.
I'm sorry.
I
thought you did.
I thought Mr. Speaker Johnson had given his gavel to the president. But it appears as though, at least based on your answers, that he gave it to Senator Thune. Because there is no excuse for the Speaker's decision to keep us out of session for 54 days. And by the way, this is
no excuse for the government to be shut down.
Mr.
You
Cole,
and your colleagues
that wasn't a
voted for that
question. I'll ask you.
repeatedly.
I'm happy to ask you a question because it seems like you are very comfortable with the House being out of session for extended periods of time. Is that a fair?
I am comfortable doing my job, and I've been here quite a bit, my friend.
I understand.
And working on these issues, quite frankly. But we didn't vote to shut down the government in the House.
Okay, you mentioned you've been here a long
and
time.
to be fair, my Senate colleagues didn't vote to shut down the government, and a majority of the United States Senate,
you've made that
including
position clear.
members from your party,
You've made your
did not
position
vote.
clear,
So
Mr. Cole.
I think the people that shut down the government can take responsibility
You've made your position
for
clear.
shutting down
As
the
you
government.
said, you've been here a lot longer than I have, and that's certainly true. I haven't been here for long. I found an article. This is from 2007. You've been in Congress for some time. The headline, Cole, quote, "Now is not the time for a vacation," end quote. This is when Democrats had the majority in 2007. Congress must work through Memorial Day recess to produce a clean funding bill. U.S. Congressman Tom Cole today joined nearly every member of the Republican conference in sending a letter to then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, calling her to keep the House in session until Congress sends then President Bush a clean funding bill that he will sign into law. This was effectively, I'll just say, the letter was sent to Speaker Pelosi 8 days before Congress is scheduled to adjourn for the Memorial Day recess. Legislative business is not scheduled to resume until June 5th. I mean, you all were clamoring, demanding that the Speaker reconvene the House and not take a 10-day recess. And now, what, we're in week 8 and we're finally here? And you won't say a word of criticism about the Speaker's strategy in keeping all of us?
I reserve my criticism for the people that shut down the government of the United States.
I
and
think
have kept it shut down for 40-odd days.
I think
and
it
have made
is-
sure SNAP recipients didn't get it. Have made sure people didn't get paid. That's
Mr.
who
Chairman,
lost
I think
with
it's
it.
rich. Again, I would just simply say that if the shoe were on the other foot, I don't think, honestly, I don't think you would hesitate, to call the Speaker's actions disgraceful, to keep us out of session for 54 days. But in any event, that's fine. Let's talk about the last 54 days. So the Speaker, he said something that was fascinating. I thought it was a really interesting quote. If I can find it. Here we go. Yeah, that was interesting. So the quote is, "House Republicans are doing some of the most meaningful work of their careers. They are in their districts. I don't want to pull them away from that." You agree with the Speaker's comments?
I don't speak for the Speaker, but I don't disagree with him. Look, we're waiting for
No,
the
no,
Senate
that's
to
not the
do its
question.
job.
That's not the question.
No,
You answered it. You answered it.
I don't
Okay, so Chairman,
disagree with the
it
Speaker.
sounds like you're saying that you agree that with the Speaker. Republican members were were doing some of the most, quote, meaningful work of their careers during that 54 days. I assume you were here in Washington and back in Oklahoma?
Yeah.
Right? Did you have any in-person town halls?
No.
None. 54 days?
Did several teletown halls.
Teletown halls. But you've done in-person town halls before. I know that to be true. Why not? 54 days is a long time. Not one town hall?
Nope.
Did you visit any of the federal facilities?
Oh, I visited federal
in your
facilities. I've done multiple meetings with chambers of commerce, Rotary clubs. It's been highly visible.
I don't know if you heard my colleague, Ms. Fishbach. She took great umbrage at this notion that, that Republicans were somehow on vacation. Did you make it down to the Mar-a-Lago Halloween party?
No.
You didn't get the invitation to the Gatsby invite? I don't know. It would be interesting. I don't know if any of her colleagues here on the other side of the dais made it down there. It strikes me that it would be hard to describe the last 54 days, at least from what I've seen, as meaningful work on the part of my colleagues in the House Republican Conference. But, again, those are that's something you'll have to defend, and folks will defend to their constituents.
I can defend myself a lot easier.
That's fine.
Not voted to shut down the government.
Mr. Chairman, you've answered the question.
Thousands of people
You've answered the question. Let's talk about, Mr. Chairman.
That's what I would worry.
Madam Chair, regular order, please. So I want to talk to you about the
I want to ask the members of the Rules Committee not to interrupt the witnesses, please. And I hope, Mr. Neguse, you do have some questions, and yet you just don't want to harangue the chairman.
I'm far from haranguing the chairman. I'm giving the opportunity for the chairman to explain the meaningful work that he's been engaged in, and I suspect that he welcomes and relishes that. So I want to talk to you about the provision that my colleague from Pennsylvania noted earlier. And this is the provision that essentially allows specifically 8 Republican United States senators to reap upwards of a $500,000 payday with respect to the phone record notice provision that they've added into the bill. You support that provision?
I didn't have anything to do with it, didn't have any knowledge of it.
Not asking if you have knowledge of it. Do you support it?
Do I support the bill? Yes. Do I support every single provision of the bill? No.
You don't find this provision repugnant? I think most American people are going to find this pretty repugnant.
I was surprised to see it in the bill. I was unaware of it. It was not.
Why not work with us to remove it?
Let's see what you do.
Well, we've got an amendment.
I will tell you this. I am very concerned, and actually Democratic senators said this. I think particularly of Senator Coons. I am very concerned that anybody, whether they're in the House or the Senate, is singled out and not notified that their records are being subpoenaed. That concerns me a great deal.
And does that justify?
Now, did I know about this provision in the bill? No. Do I think it needs to be in a funding bill? Not particularly. But do I think getting the governments open is important? Yes, I do. But I was unaware of the provision, so.
Well, there's an amendment that will be introduced I'm not asking a question. Mr. Chairman, not asking you a question. Let me finish my statement, and then you'll have an opportunity. There will be an amendment proposed to remove what I think is a deeply insidious provision. I think it is outrageous for these Republican senators to effectively guarantee themselves $1 million paydays. Retroactive provision in this bill that very clearly applies to them. The removal of all relevant immunity defenses on the part of the United States government. This is insanity to allow this provision to go forward. And I would hope that my Republican colleagues would join us in supporting the removal of this provision. At a minimum, we ought to be able to find common ground on that. So with that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Neguse. Mr. Langworthy, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I, like all of you, are here in Washington today instead of celebrating the incredible veterans in our district and across the country. But as members of the Rules Committee, we begin the important process here in the House that will finally end this shutdown madness. I honor the veterans every day, and especially today. But the work we're doing here tonight and starting that work, and we'll finish tomorrow, will begin to end the turmoil that has made their lives and the lives of millions of Americans harder for more than 40 days. For over 40 days, the American people have endured a completely unnecessary and entirely avoidable government shutdown. Not because Congress couldn't find common ground, even though we passed the bill through the next.
Now is affordable.
This is not.
He said 300,000 Oklahomans will be affected. This is his quote. It's been a long time since we've seen individuals faced with the real challenge of deciding whether or not to take advantage of health insurance for themselves, their families, or go bare. And that's a close quote. And that's the thing about this. These are not just in Democrat districts. And what I love is that we are fighting because we don't care whether you're in a Democrat district or Republican district. What we care about is health insurance. And that's what this fight has proven, is that we care about whether or not you're going to be able to afford your health insurance. And you know what? When Representative Roy was talking about being a cancer survivor,
I wish you cared as much about whether or not my people get paid.
What?
You know, whether or not the people that are working at Tinker Air Force, I wish you cared about them getting
but I didn't ask
paid.
you a question, Madam Chairwoman.
Well,
I didn't ask
I
you a question.
apologize, but
Thank you.
you
So-
were talking about my district, so
Yeah.
I thought I would
Well,
express myself about my district and what they think.
We've heard you talk about that before, and I have 30,000 people in New Mexico who are federal employees, and I've been meeting with them as well. But I wanted to go to the fact that, you know, Representative Roy, who came and left so quickly, he was talking about cancer and how he's a cancer survivor. I'm a cancer survivor. And he was talking about how the Affordable Care Act is so bad. But you know what? I'm a cancer survivor. And so if it wouldn't have been for the Affordable Care Act, I would not be able to get insurance. Because there was a pre-existing condition. You know what else I am? I am a woman. And because I was a woman and could have had babies, I would have also been a pre-existing condition. And these are the benefits of the Affordable Care Act. And the list goes on and on about why that Affordable Care Act makes sense. But what we also need to make it be is affordable. And we had a hearing. I'm the chair of the Democratic Women's Caucus. Together with members of the Policy and Steering Committee, we had a hearing. Well, Republicans were on vacation. Well, Republicans were gone. If you don't want to call it vacation, let's be honest, you were not here. But we were. And we held a hearing. And one of the most compelling voices, I mean, they were all compelling. We actually had to take out our tissue because we were crying. But one of those voices was from Utah, Brick from Utah, who has a condition that he needs infusions. And the only way he can afford those infusions is through because he gets those tax credits. And he said, I want to work. And he went and talked to his representatives, and he met with his senators. And he did get to talk to Representative Kennedy, and Representative Kennedy's answer to him was, well, just go on disability. Doesn't save their anything at all to work. You know what? We're going to have an amendment from Leader Jeffries and Whip Clark, I see her here, that's going to have a 3-year extension. And I'm supposing you wouldn't support that amendment. Is that right, Mr.
I don't have a vote on that amendment unless you get it out of here, so.
Right. But we could vote, and we will vote later on a 1-year extension, right? Just a 1-year extension, because we've heard the ranking member talk over and over again about that they are Republicans who want that 1-year extension. So we could do that as an amendment. I'll offer that as well. It's 14 of her colleagues. Do you know, what would a 1-year extension cost us, Chairman Cole?
I have no idea. We have no jurisdiction. This is not, with all due respect, can I finish my answer?
Sure.
With all due respect, we don't deal with this on Appropriations Committee. This is not our jurisdiction. It's not our issue. That's part of the problem here. You're trying to raise it on appropriations bills. This is a Ways and Means or an Energy and Commerce issue. It's not ours. And so to hold up the funding of the entire government over something that belongs in another committee, not ours, and you're basically holding our bills, not you, and frankly, not the House, and not even a majority of the Senate. But our bills have been held hostage over something we have no jurisdiction over.
Thank you, Chairman Cole. You made that point earlier, but as we were here before, when you all passed it, this bill has tons of stuff that's not appropriations. And Ranking Member, I've heard it's about $23 billion for 1 year. That's about what it costs for 1 year. Is that right?
For 1 year, but it was 1 year.
I've asked Ranking Member, sir.
And setting up a bipartisan commission, a bipartisan, to look into this and to address the issues that people may have some concern about. But a 1 year extension, give some relief to the people who are out there. And I quoted Connecticut, you quote your district, and we can quote everyone's district and what's happening to people out there today. And the notion that we can't take this up because the continuing resolution is what the Appropriations Committee does. And we've got 50 pages of this document that deals with health care. If there were the willingness, the political will to solve this, we could do it, and we could do it very, very quickly. And let's not bifurcate continuing resolution to appropriations bills. It is all of one package. And it is incredible to me that we would watch people suffer everywhere to see what's going on with their rising health care prices, or their kids that are not going to be able to get the treatment that they need, and that just say, hey, figure it out another way. No, that's not what we're about. And that really is what is so outrageous about the conversation and what is going on. Go ahead.
So, Ranking Member, I think that you're right on point. It's like, we can do this because we do it all the time. This bill is full of things, and we'll get to that whole idea of the payola for those senators in a moment, right? but I'm also struck by the contrast of priorities. The contrast of priorities. Democrats have been talking about the need to address health care, and it's not just since the shutdown. It was in that big, beautifully bad bill of theirs. Health care was key, and they could fix it now. But it's the priorities. $40 billion, I would think that's what is proposed to be sent down to Argentina.
Yes.
Chairman Cole, is that,
right.
Do you recall that?
No, I don't.
It's $40 billion.
$40 billion.
$40 billion. So that seems to be a priority. They will send $40 billion to Argentina instead of spending $23 billion to provide health care to Americans, and all we're getting is a pinky promise that they will address that, but they won't even support a 1 year extension, a 3 year extension, or a permanent extension. But let's get to the stuff that's not. Let's get to the stuff that is not probably appropriation, but what has been stuck in this bill that would provide those senators. It's like a payola. Like, what kind of bribe is that? Who gets 500,000 of violations? And that's why we're saying it's maybe $8 million. Senators are going to get $1 million, a couple of million, $500,000, and we're not going to give money to help a father pay for his health care? Is that what's going on here, Ranking Member?
Speaking of what doesn't belong in an appropriations bill, this doesn't belong in an appropriations bill. It's really a review by an ethics committee that says that they can be paid off. We had it's just outrageous what's happened here. But in terms of the process, what so violates what appropriations has done. It normally is the process where you get the 4 people involved that are the chairs and ranking members in the House and Senate, and you have a sign-off on the bills. First of all, that did not happen this time as well, and my Republican colleagues, the Senate, the Senate chair, they just went forward and posted the bills without having sign-off. Then this is secretly put it in the bill at the last hour with no one, including the House chair or ranking member, or I don't believe the ranking member on the Senate side. This was a sweetheart deal that was put in there that rips off the government and the people of this country.
And Americans think that the system is stacked against them.
And
And
it
when
is.
Republicans support giving payouts to senators in the millions of dollars, they can see why. But I'm going to give my Republican colleagues on this committee the opportunity to say this is not right. I will be offering an amendment to strip that entire section from the bill. We'll see what kind of courage the Republicans on this dais have. Now, I am the last Democrat to be able to ask questions, so I wanted to just give the ranking member an opportunity to see if there was anything else she wanted to raise in response to some of the other issues that...
No, I thank the gentlelady very, very much. It's really been really incredible. And first of all, you know, everybody here is supportive of our veterans and so forth, and to, if we really wanted to do something about taking care of our veterans and their health care, we would have, and you would have, dealt with the $51.7 billion in advance funding for our veterans through the Toxic Exposure Fund, which was done, by the way, in the Fiscal Responsibility Act several years ago, which we've done, and the ranking member of Milcon VA is here, and yet there is advance money. There is advance money for medical care, but for the Toxic Exposure Fund, the answer is no. Why? You want to help veterans? This leads to me, when I see that there's no commitment on the Toxic Exposure Fund. And what we do and what we have done in the past, it really is, we have done advanced funding over the years. And we did, and as I mentioned earlier in my comments, Ranking Member Wasserman Schultz, Chair Judge Carter, a full day of negotiations. Quite frankly, it was one of the bright, shining spots of bipartisanship we had in going through the appropriations process, but that has been... We had to reopen the government in order for there to be SNAP benefits to go to families. $6 billion in a contingency fund, which we voted for. Read the bill, understand what you did in the bill, and know what you did. You passed it, and it was the president who decided he did not want to spend that money to feed people. He's taken it all the way to the Supreme Court to deprive people and kids. It's 16 million kids. It's 8 million seniors. It's 4 million people who are disabled and 1.2 million veterans. You want to care for your veterans? Care for your veterans? Make sure that that money in that contingency fund is outflowing tonight and going, and not let them claw back, telling states, get the money back that you have given out. What is wrong with this picture? And I just say, if Mr. Roy were here, I would tell him, which he needs to understand. He needs to understand. He talked about a buyout. The buyouts were offered using money that government simply did not have. They signed contracts, buyouts with money that the Congress had not yet appropriated. That is unlawful. There is a lawlessness about this administration, and particularly where it affects the Appropriations Committee. They have been doing it from day one, and I love being on the Appropriations Committee as chair, as ranking member, and I, by God, am not going to give up one single bit of power that the Appropriations Committee has in order to be able to carry out our mission, and that is the $1.7 trillion that we deal with every single year for the services that the American people depend on. That's what we should be doing, and the power of the purse. Talk about a clean bill? No clean bill. They took back $410 billion from that earlier budget, and nothing is said about allowing them to continue to get away with this. An unelected bureaucrat, Russ Vought, who has the power to take that money away, which Tom Cole and myself and the other appropriators said we were going to pass because it makes a difference to our constituents. It is really.
So it's given them the ability to 6. Subpoenaed, searched, accessed, or disclosed in violation of this section may bring a civil action against the United States if the violation was committed by an officer, employee, or agent of the United States or of any federal department of agent or agency. Relief. If the senator prevails on a claim under this subsection, the court shall, not may, shall award for each instance of a violation of this section the greater of, not the lesser of, the greater of statutory damages of $500,000 or the amount of actual damages, reasonable attorney fees, cost of litigation, and it goes on from there. Now, there's other language in here, waiver of sovereign immunity, no qualified immunity, and there's other language in here too that indicates that each line would be an additional payment. And so most of us as members have a campaign phone, a campaign email, a personal phone, a personal email, and then a business phone and a business email. That's 6 violations the way they count it. If they went for all of them, 6. Minimum of $500,000 apiece. Now, I don't think, and I've been asking questions on this since last night, and I'm going to tell you, I don't think that Senate leadership shared with the leadership of the House what they were doing. Now, I want the Democrats to know this. My understanding is that Chuck Schumer was very much aware and signed off on this particular language as well. So just, y'all might want to ask questions about that. I'm just telling the truth on this. Is as soon as I found out about it, I started asking questions. But they're saying, well, the executive branch shouldn't be checking up on the legislative branch. Well, there's some truth to that. There's a lot of truth to it. I believe in the separation of powers. And they talk about it being good governance. The thing that I can't get past, though, and this is, again, I mean, for the American citizens, if you go to page 227 of the bill, limited retroactive applicability. In general, the amendments made by this section shall apply to any acquisition, subpoena, search, accessing, disclosure of Senate data as defined in Section 10A of the Legislative Branch Appropriations Act of 2005, and to any failure to disclose such an acquisition, subpoena, search, accessing, or disclosure occurring on or after January 1 of 2022. So it's given them the ability to retroactively go back. We know, you literally know who, at least, we may not know all of them, but we at least know the list of some of them. In this paragraph, the term violation section 10 is the meaning given to the violation section. It goes on from there. But there's also language in there where it indicates that each account is a separate payment. Now, this language did not go through any committee markup. This language was not shared with the House of Representatives prior to it being put in the bill. And I personally agree that it should be removed. The problem is if we remove it, the Senate, it has to go back to the Senate. And then you're right back to where you were 40 days ago, where all of a sudden you're trying to get a piece of legislation out of the Senate. And so, I mean, I've struggled. I want you to know that, Mr. Cole. I want the American citizen to know. I've struggled with what the right course of action here is because what they did is wrong. This should not be in this piece of legislation. And they can say it's about good governance all they want to. When they made it retroactive, then all of a sudden it was no longer about good governance. There's actually a list of people that know they will get paid as soon as this thing is signed. At least they've got the coupon where all they have to do is go file at the courthouse and get paid. And I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do. My gut is, because of the way this place is so dysfunctional now, that the right thing to do is to get the government cut on as soon as possible and make sure that the American citizens are watching what those senators do and hold them to account for what they did. And at the same time, the House put legislation out that actually reverses what the Senate has done. They should vote on this in the light of day. If they think this is the right thing to do, then they should have a committee meeting and a straight up or down vote on it. Don't hold my people who work in my district at Robins Air Force Base paycheck any longer than it's already been held. And so I want you to know, Mr. Cole, you're our chair. I respect you tremendously, as much as I respect anybody in this House, and as much, I mean, I can take everybody I ever met. I have tremendous respect for you. You are a man of integrity and honesty, and when you tell me you didn't know, I trust you. And when Mike Johnson, when I'm asking questions about it at 9 o'clock last night, I don't think our side knows. I do think I think the Dems and the Republicans in the Senate knew, though. I do. I want you to know that. And but this is, I mean, American citizens just need to read it, and they can figure out for themselves. It's not that hard. It's big letters. It starts on 217. It ends on 228. It won't take you 10 minutes to read it, and you really can pretty much start where the private cause of action is discussed. But that would never pass if that was a standalone piece of legislation, and it is clearly authorizing an Appropriations Act.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'll be happy to yield to Mr. Roy.
Yeah, I just want to add that I share the concerns of the gentleman from Georgia. I do not think that this provision should have been inserted. It certainly shouldn't have been inserted at the 11th hour without deliberation and back and forth. I do believe that the gentleman was correct. There were Democrats and Republicans involved with it. But I think there's going to be a lot of people, if they look and understand this, are going to see it as self-serving, self-dealing kind of stuff, and I don't think that's right. And I understand that I think some of the motivations were to try to target a DOJ that I think was fairly obviously abusing its authority and targeting United States senators, separation of powers concerns, all the things. We can debate all that, but we think it was pretty egregious, so I have no problem with the prospect of going after and trying to empower, even through private right of action, a way to go, because we do it in other contexts, consent decrees and other things, but the retroactive, potential to have dollars going to United States senators, when we've got American citizens, whether it was J6ers, whether it was people from the FACE Act, whether it was others that have also had the full force of the federal government through the Department of Justice targeting and coming down on them, and they're going to see, oh, but you can slide in a provision in here for United States senators? Like, it is beside my comprehension that this got put in the bill. And it's why people have such a low opinion of this town. I am torn also, the gentleman from Georgia, because we need to fund the government and we need to get this passed. And I'm trying to figure out what we can do to force the Senate's hand to say you're going to repeal this provision and fix it without amending it here to then delay the funding of government, which we want to proceed to go move forward with. But that provision needs to get fixed. And we need to find a way as a body to get it fixed as soon as possible. And I'm continuing explore the options tonight. I yield back to the gentleman from Georgia.
Mr. Scott, would you yield?
I just want to point out it's $500,000, and the way it's written, it is a minimum of $500,000. It is per line. It is and Ms. Ledger Hernandez, I'll give you 60 seconds, but I think it's time to move on. I just don't.
I truly appreciate your very careful consideration and review for the American people of this. As you know, I do have an amendment to strike the whole thing, and I think it would send a great message if you would actually say, "I'm going to vote for this amendment."
And this is why I didn't want to get into this debate. The problem is, if we could take it out and send it to the Senate, and know that the gamesmanship wasn't going to be played over there, and the government would get cut back on, I'd be glad to. But the bottom line is, if we amend this bill with anything at all, we risk extending the shutdown, air traffic controllers not being paid, law enforcement not being paid, our staffs here not being paid. And that's a risk that I don't trust.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I don't trust just the Democrats. I don't trust the system to work where we could fix it with what probably a supermajority of this committee thinks should be done and not delay the government coming back on. And with
So
that,
the other, I would only point out, that it's not, if you would, I just wanted to finish, will you give me 15 seconds?
yes.
So it says each violation, and so the violation isn't just each telephone, it's each time it's requested, so it could multiply much higher than that, because it's by violation.
That is my read as well.
Yeah, we agree on that.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair? I just want to state for the record, it's another reason why the House and the Senate should be in session during a shutdown. Maybe this could have been avoided.
Thank you, Mr. McGovern. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Griffith, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, too, am very concerned about those sections. I will tell you, I've already made the decision that I will vote for this bill and not vote for any amendments because the shutdown needs to end. It's been going on too long. Too many of my people are hurting, and we got to get it done. There's some other issues in here, not as egregious, but at least it was done in the light of day with a vote. But the hemp issues, that was a fight between gentlemen in the Senate from Kentucky, both of them fighting each other. I don't agree with the solution they came up with, but I'm voting for it because I've got too many people that need the government to open. And therefore, notwithstanding, we're going to hear some great amendments, I'm sure, but I'm not voting for any of them because we need to get this thing done, and then we can start negotiating on other things. Now, Mr. Cole, Mr. Chairman, you've said this a couple times. I want to underline it because it's exciting for me to hear it coming from the Appropriations Chair. Because one of the things as now a longtime member of the Energy and Commerce Committee that drives us crazy is that people want to airdrop. This didn't just happen. This happens when we're here in session. It didn't happen because people weren't here. It happens all the time between the House and the Senate on bills that come out of appropriations. And you haven't done it, to the best of my knowledge, but they create programs that are never authorized by the authorizing committees. And you're absolutely right. When it comes to the premium enhanced tax credits or the enhanced premium tax credits, that's the jurisdiction of Energy and Commerce, Ways and Means, and Ed and Workforce. They overlap. Different pieces of it belong to each of those. And of course, the bill that they keep talking about, that they claim took all this money away, that came out of the Budget Committee. That didn't come out of appropriations either, the reconciliation bill. And I just appreciate that you're recognizing that's not the proper jurisdiction. And before we had the shutdown, I wrote a whole column on how we could reach some kind of an agreement on a glide path. But I also pointed out in several, and I've had several columns where I've talked about this. I do a weekly column, that we have 20% on the enhanced premium tax credits. We have what is pretty darn clear, 20% shadow enrollees. Now, if you will bear with me, Mr. Chairman, tell me if you disagree with this. What we see is normally in an insurance plan, you have 15% of the enrollees don't use their insurance in a given year. That's been for decades, and some years it may go up 0.2 or down 0.2, but it's right around that 15%. With the enhanced premium tax credits, we see 35% not using it. And here's what I believe is happening, and I think most experts agree with this. You tell me if you have any disagreement. Jump in, Mr. Chairman, and tell me if you disagree. What happened, because it was an emergency piece of legislation during COVID, because they wanted to help people that were having a hard time, they didn't put in all the checks and balances. So you don't have to re-enroll. It's an automatic re-enrollment because it was only going to be a 5-year program. And what could happen, and the theory I use and the example, the hypothetical I always use is, if you live in North Florida and you happen to go to a grocery store or a mall and you get enrolled, and then 6 months, 8 months, 9 months later, you move to South Georgia and you go to the mall or the grocery store and you get enrolled. Most citizens of the United States would think, well, I'm enrolled now in Georgia, so they've canceled my program in Florida. But that's not happening with the enhanced premium tax credits. And my frustration with this argument for the last 40 days has been, open up the government and we can figure this out, because as the Health Subcommittee Chair on Energy and Commerce, I don't want us to continue to waste 20% of our money that we're spending. It's billions of dollars. I don't want to continue to waste 20% of that money that doesn't go to help a single enrollee. It goes to the insurance companies, and they're getting the money. They don't know whether the people really exist or not either, because there's no way to check, and it keeps rolling on. If we do a 3-year extension without some way to check, or a 1-year extension, which our colleagues on the other side of the aisle have recommended to us, either a 1-year or a 3-year extension, we're going to continue that 20% waste. We're going to waste the taxpayer dollars. That doesn't mean I don't want to help people who are trying to struggle. And even for some of those, Kaiser Family Foundation estimates that 10% of the people are receiving these benefits are over the 400% poverty level, which means they're making $106,000 a year. And maybe in some of the rich districts in the country, that doesn't seem like much money. In my district, where the average household income is just over $50,000, we haven't quite reached 51 yet, that means they're making pretty good money, and yet we're not even looking at doing that. Now, I'm not saying we take that away 100% the first year. We've got to take a look at that. That's what needs to be negotiated. But that was never part of your bill. That was in my jurisdiction. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. And to the gentleman's point, just go back, a totally separate bill, but if you'll remember toward the end of last year, we were working hard. A lot of our fellow Americans were hurting from hurricanes. We're doing a disaster relief bill. The Appropriations Committee did a little over 100 pages and spent about $100 billion, I think 110 because we added $10 billion for ag. That bill was 1,500 pages long when it hit the floor. None of us were consulted on the Appropriations Committee about this. And honestly, it had some stuff I probably would be for, like PBM reform, and it just didn't belong with us. And matter of fact, we caught a lot of grief on the floor from both sides of E&C, because what were you doing? We didn't. It blew up because people look at a bill that big and they go, "What in the hell is in 1,500 pages?" And again, my committee didn't have any. Now, in the end, what we passed was what the Appropriations Committee did, which was a little over 100 pages. But all the rest of that stuff was loaded on us. This is, so it's not like they even come and ask us. So I've had some pretty stern discussions with our leadership about this, but it's true on both sides, and it's true with other committees. I mean, other committees use us as the I don't recall anybody carrying an appropriations bill to help us out on E&C or Ways and Means or anyplace else.
Don't give us any ideas, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, so believe me. So I agree with gentleman's point. I would prefer these things go to the committees that have the expertise, and they move the vehicles, not us. Not because it's a must-pass, we got a fun deal. If it's a good bill, and if it's bipartisan, like PBM reform, I guess was, from everything I heard, then why couldn't it trot out there on its own? Why did it have to be part of ours and confuse everybody about what we had in the bill that we had no hearings, no jurisdiction on, or anything? So that's an institutional problem. And I would say I see it on both sides of the aisle.
Yep.
It's something that we're trying to stay away from.
And I appreciate you working on that, because as you know, and it's part of why my colleague, Mr. Scott, is frustrated with the way this place works, because we have rules and then we don't follow those rules. And if we follow the rules, I don't think we'd be in this spot, because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are correct. We've dumped all kinds of things before in appropriations bills, but that doesn't mean it was right. And in this case, you gave us a bill that dealt with appropriations, kept us open for 7 or 8 weeks, and I submit to you, Mr. Chairman, I think at least on the part that was, I don't know about the part with Ways and Means and Ed and Workforce, but the part that was in Energy and Commerce, I think we could have hammered something out. But the number one concern that I have about just doing this blanket and claiming, oh, we're saving health care, is the 20% that's going to the insurance companies. It's not a question of, you know, which side of the aisle you're on. We're giving 20% of the money that we're spending on the enhanced premium tax credits directly to the bottom line of insurance companies because they don't know whether it's Joe Smith or Jane Doe or somebody else, but they know pretty much based on statistics over decades that there are 20% shadow enrollees. And if we don't fix that waste, we are not doing a service for the American people. We are not keeping track of the dollars. And it's a shame that it got wrapped up into this. It was fake from the beginning, in my opinion. We could have worked on it. We could have passed the CR, and while some people say it wasn't clean, and technically it had some other stuff in it, but none of it was stuff the Democrats opposed. Telemedicine, federal qualified health centers. I mean, there was some good stuff in there that belonged in an appropriations style bill. And it's all in here, is it not, Mr. Chairman? All of that stuff we had in the original CR is still in here.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as far as those programs are concerned. And yet, because some folks wanted to make it all about health insurance, which was not what this bill was about, was it?
No, sir.
And didn't actually want to deal with resolving the issue in a responsible legislative manner, working through the proper committees. We've been shut down for 40 days, and that then ties my hands tonight. I can't vote for amendments that I might otherwise think are appropriate, and I can't vote for amendments that I think are not only appropriate, but are truly justified, not just marginally, but by 2/3. I cannot vote for them because I want to get this shutdown over. There are too many things being impacted in my district, and I'm sure in other districts too. I can only speak to my district, but having one of the most economically challenged districts in the country, I heard somebody say something about suffering. I'm just going to tell you, I looked it up, and that individual said we had to have a little suffering. They're like 29th. I'm 409th out of 435 on household income. I got enough suffering without the federal government adding to it. So I will be voting no on all the amendments, and yes to get this thing across the finish line.
But the gentleman yield one second.
I will yield to
one second, which is this. You made a stat. I want to make sure everybody understands. You talked about the 15%, a number that you said was an historic number.
It's over the decades. It's roughly.
As it relates to enrollees who don't file a claim, right?
That's
so
correct.
About 15%. That is for private plans, but that was also the number, give or take a percentage point, for Obamacare plans prior to the COVID subsidies, when they then bumped from 15 to now 35 to 40%. Is that correct?
That is my understanding. Yeah. And the other thing that drives me crazy, I would say to the gentleman, is that everybody talks about these subsidies, and a lot of my folks are afraid that their basic Obamacare or ACA subsidies going away. That was never threatened. That was never in question. The only thing that's in question is the emergency program that was put in for a 5-year period that is the enhanced premium tax credit, not your basic ACA subsidies, the enhanced premium tax credit. With that, Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Jack, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And as the last thing between this panel and the amendment panel, I recognize that I will be brief. But I will say just from the outset, first I want to commend my colleagues' comments, and I want to commend the chairman's testimony. I also want to note, and I'm proud that Congressman Langworthy noted that it is Veterans Day, and I want to note from the outset we have 79 veterans serving in the House, Republicans and Democrats, some of whom are in the room. We thank you for your service, and we thank the millions of Americans who served in our uniform for your service on this important day. Chairman, in closing, if you could just tie everything together from this hearing, the vote tomorrow, it's a binary choice to open the government or to prolong the shutdown. And we've talked a lot about what this bill actually does, and we've heard the other side comment on what they think it does. I want to give you a chance to close out and remind everybody what this bill principally does tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and I appreciate the attitude. And honestly, I won't say 10 tonight's hearing made me miss the Rules Committee, but it does remind me how grateful I am to all of you on both sides of the aisle for what you do here. And I mean, that's true. Look, I think it is a pretty simple choice tomorrow. There are parts of every bill that I don't like. If I got to write everything, then I'd love everything in it. And if I didn't have to get things through the Senate, I'd probably, but basically this is about reopening the government. You know, we got 3 bills that we broadly agree on. We don't agree on every single thing in them. There's certainly some things, but they were negotiated out mostly by the subcommittee chairs and ranking members. There were relatively few issues that went up to us. They're all either flat spending or slightly reduced. Those are 3 good bills, and in those 3 areas, they'll protect us from disruption of service for SNAP and WIC. They'll take care of our military construction. They'll make sure that the Capitol Hill police and our staffs and people get paid through September 30th. So that's actually a good start on the appropriations process. The CR buys us back the time and then a little bit more that I would argue we've wasted in the last several weeks. Gives us to January 30th. We'll try and negotiate another package of bills, maybe 2 or 3 more. I mean, that's something the 4 corners have to get together and decide, but we're ready to negotiate on all 12 bills, with 3 across the floor, all of them out of committee. We literally, once they're out of committee, we can negotiate. We know we didn't write the final version in the deal, and if you look at our bills, they're a lot different than sometimes characterized in the press. We're not as far apart from the Democrats or from the Senate as you might think. So we'll try and get those things done. We've got some really important bills there. Defense and labor aid, probably the 2 most important to get done. But this will give us the time to do that. I would say we've gone through this process, in my opinion. Others would have a different, because we're trying to deal with things, but things have been dumped into the appropriations process that have nothing to do with it. I mean, we do not decide Medicaid. That is not our business or our wheelhouse. We do not decide the subsidy issues. Like everybody here, if you're on the relevant committee, then you're hands-on, and the rest of us have a vote when you produce a product and we go to the floor. So I'm going to have a vote on those things. They're dealt with. They don't, but you shouldn't be holding up. Neither side should. Both sides have done this over the years. So I don't, it's not like anybody's got clean hands here. But we've seen this enough. It doesn't work. You don't hold up the funding for the government to achieve an unrelated objective. We tried to do it with the repeal of Obamacare. It crashed and burned. Now, we were smart enough to get out of it in 16 days. I didn't think anybody would ever be dumb enough to go beyond 16 days. We're at 42 now. And then we tried to do it, really the administration tried to do it, over building the wall in 2018 and 19. Democrats tried to do it over DACA, didn't work. They're trying to do it now. Not going to work here either. This is just a bad strategy. Shutting down the government to achieve an unrelated objective is not likely to be successful. It has not been successful. If we pass this tomorrow, and it comes out of committee tonight, obviously you guys have the first decision, I think that hopefully puts another nail in the coffin, and we don't do this anymore. Let's just make the government run. The people that I care, they may care very much about what my friends care about on the insurance, but some of them undoubtedly do. Most of them just want to go, if I go to work, can I get paid? If I'm doing important work for the government, keeping airplanes flying or, helping our guys train for drones or whatever, I just want to get paid. Or I've got a uniform on and I'm willing to go to really bad places for my country. I'd like to know my family at home is going to get a paycheck. That's really bad. This is the day-to-day functioning of the government. And that's the choice before us. And again, you can be for these other things. I still think Obamacare was a mistake. If it never happened, I don't think we'd be in this mess on this insurance issue. But it did happen. It passed. It passed both houses. The President of the United States signed it. We tried to repeal it. We repealed it multiple times in the House. Never could get Senate, never could get a president when we had the Senate to get it done. We came close, got to 1 vote. in President Trump's first term, but we didn't get it done. But the point is, shutting down the government is just a bad thing. So I think we have a chance here to restore some regular order, get 3 good bills through, not perfect, but good, buy some time to get the rest, and then hopefully these other matters, which, again, the president has said he's willing to negotiate once the government's reopened. The majority leader and the speaker said, but it's not going to look exactly like it does now if it's a real negotiation. You have to remember, this subsidy wasn't negotiated in a bipartisan sense. It didn't have a single Republican vote. You know, and again, my friends had the power to do that. They did it. Okay, fair enough. I'm not saying it was enacted by the rule or in some way contrary to the rule, but again, tomorrow's question to me, and I agree with a lot of the comments on various things here by both sides, is simply, I want to make sure that the people that go to work for the federal government get paid. I want to make sure that the government is open and functioning. I want to know when an American buys an airline ticket that that airline plane is likely to leave on time and travel safely and get there. I want people that are inspecting meat, not the most glamorous job in the world, so that my family can have a good Thanksgiving, are doing that job and getting paid to do it. This is just about operating the government and then giving us a chance to do it for the other 9 areas that we have to do. So, again, I appreciate the work you guys do here, but to me, this is a binary choice, and it'll have some things in the bills that I don't like or I didn't agree with, or in one case, didn't know anything about until it was posted. Is what it is, but, you know, where I'm from, my folks want to go to work, want to do their job, and then want us to work out these other things in the appropriate way through the appropriate committees. They don't want government held hostage, you know, and, you know, they'll get mad at me over something, but it won't be because I voted to shut the government down. I've never done that. I've never been in favor of it. I argued we were making a mistake when we've done it. I think my friends on the other side and certainly in the other chamber have made a mistake when they've tried to do it. And again, I just think we want to get the government up and running.
Well said. I appreciate that, Chairman. Madam Chairwoman, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jack. I'm sorry, Ms. DeLauro.
I thought you might be sorry.
Thank you. This ends the first panel. I thank the chairman and the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee for being here for almost 3 hours. And I appreciate your kind words, Mr. Chairman.
We'll be back in January.
And you are excused.
Thank you
we
very much,
appreciate
Madam
it.
Chair.
Thank you.
Take care.
Leader Jeffries and Democratic Whip Clark, you're invited to the witness table. Leader Jeffries, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our ranking member, Jim McGovern, for the opportunity to testify before the Rules Committee on behalf of an amendment that Whip Catherine Clark and I are introducing that would extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for 3 years. Millions of working-class Americans all across this country are struggling from the high cost of living that exists in the United States of America. This country is too expensive. Now, Donald Trump and Republicans promised all throughout 2024 that costs were going to go down on day one. But costs aren't going down for the American people under Republican complete control of government. Costs are going up. housing costs up, grocery costs up, electricity bills through the roof. And now, because of the Republican refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of Americans are about to experience dramatically increased premiums, co-pays, and deductibles. In some cases, everyday Americans, working class Americans, middle class Americans are going to see their premiums go up by $1,000 or $2,000 per month. We have an affordability crisis here in the United States of America, and Republicans continue to bury their heads in the sand. During the longest shutdown in American history, the Trump Republican shutdown, what we've seen repeatedly from our Republican colleagues, who here in the House were on a taxpayer-funded vacation for more than 7 weeks, welcome back, is that Donald Trump has done everything but try to actually make life better for the American people. He somehow has found $40 billion to bail out his right-wing wannabe dictator buddy in Argentina, putting Argentina first, but not the American people first. And so Whip Clark and myself, on behalf of the House Democratic Caucus, believe that this amendment to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits for tens of millions of hard-working American taxpayers is actually designed to put the American people first. And we're hopeful that our Republican colleagues will join us and abandon the reckless policies that you all have pursued in creating this Republican health care crisis, including but not limited to what Republicans did in your one big ugly bill, largest cut to Medicaid in American history, ripping health insurance away from at least 14 million people. Hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health clinics all across the country, including in rural America, are closing because of Republican policies. And now, because of the refusal to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits, tens of millions of people are going to suffer, will be unable to see a doctor when they need one, in every single community in this country. And so we respectfully urge all of our colleagues to support this amendment to extend the Affordable Care Act tax credits and support the American people. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jeffries. Ms. Clark, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Ranking Member McGovern, members of the committee. Thank you for having us. I am proud to co-sponsor Leader Jeffries' amendment and to be here in support of this urgent lifeline for the American people. To my Republican colleagues, welcome back. I don't know what you've been doing the last 54 days, but I hope you've spent some of that time talking to your
neighbors, hearing from your constituents, and I hope you've heard the same stories that they have been conveying to us. I hope you realize just how anxious they are, how desperate they are as they scramble to figure out how they are going to afford health care under this Republican budget. And I hope you got a chance to hear from the people who traveled to the United States Capitol trying to secure meetings with their Republican members of Congress. Americans like the farmer I met, Ann, from Minnesota. She's a soybean farmer, already suffering from the market disaster caused by Republican tariffs. Then she found out her local hospital was closing because of the Medicaid cuts in your budget. And now you're going after her ACA coverage. And by the way, 1 in 4 out of our farmers get their health care coverage through the ACA. You have sent her premiums skyrocketing, and I have heard this same story from small business owners, from gig workers, from parents, from people who live in your states. So what are we doing here today? You've already voted to dismantle Medicaid, the largest health care program in America, a program that covers 40% of all births in this country, 40% of children in this country, 40% of disabled people in this country. But you couldn't leave it there. Now you're going after the millions of families who get their coverage under the Affordable Care Act. And let's be clear about what that actually means, specifically to your own constituents. Let's take a couple making $88,000 a year. In each of your districts, that couple currently pays for a Silver Plan $623 a month. It is by no means cheap. But here's what that couple will pay in 2026 if you vote yes on this budget. In Pendleton, New York, this couple will go from paying $623 to $1,160 per month. In Tifton, Georgia, they will pay $2,134 a month. In Greensboro, North Carolina, they will pay $2,300. In Rock Hill, South Carolina, they will pay $2,600. And in Fredericksburg, Texas, this middle-class couple will pay $3,000 every single month to get themselves some halfway decent health insurance. This budget will raise costs on people who voted for Donald Trump, people who believed him, who believed their Republican members of Congress when they promised to lower their cost of living. And instead, they're being asked to spend up to $3,000 a month for ACA coverage. That's $30 a year before their deductible, before their copays. What a betrayal of a straightforward promise. But this is not a given. This does not have to happen to the American people. This is a choice. Democrats have been presenting off-ramps all year. We've been giving you a chance to reverse course day after day. Well, here's another. Here's another chance to do right by the people you represent, who believe in you and voted for you. I urge you, for the sake of the American people, to make Leader Jeffries' amendment extending the ACA tax credit for 3 years in order, and bring it to the House floor for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to defer my questions until the end when I see how many things need to be corrected that are being said. Mr. McGovern, I recognize.
Well, I need to correct the record for some things that have been said, Madam Chair, with all due respect. First of all, with regard to the claims that my Republican friends can't vote for any amendments because somehow that will mean that the government shutdown will be prolonged, the Senate basically took a day and a half for them to do what they did. If we were to pass make any amendments in order in the Rules Committee, like getting rid of that slush fund for certain senators, the Senate Majority Leader Thune could call them back tonight. They say, be ready to vote tomorrow night. They could take care of that right away. So that's number one. Number two, my friends keep on talking about a democratic shutdown. I want, in case anyone's watching here, I want to make this very, very clear. And I'm going to make it clear to my Republican friends, you control everything. You control the White House, you control the House, you control the Senate. So Democrats did not shut the government down. Republicans did by refusing to negotiate. And the third thing I want to correct for the record is I got to be honest, I am shocked by the indifference that my Republican friends are showing towards the impact of not extending the ACA tax credits. It is stunning to me. I don't know whether you don't talk to your constituents, but if you do, people are getting bills where their premiums are skyrocketing. I mean, it's astronomical. And you knew about this well before the shutdown. You chose to do nothing. You chose to do nothing. You knew about it during the shutdown. You chose to do nothing, not even to want to sit down and negotiate. And now you know about it. I'm going to tell you right now, you refuse to act. You own this. You own this. and it's a cruel thing to do to the American people. Leader Jeffries, I want to get to the substance of your amendment, which I think is so important. But first, I want to ask you about something one of our Republican colleagues said in this hearing room just before you came in here. Earlier, I asked Chairman Cole a simple question. I said, do you think the House should have been here these last 8 weeks trying to pass appropriation bills? Because as you know, as Appropriations Chair, he still has not passed 9 out of 12 bills that need to pass by the end of the fiscal year, which was in September, by the way, to keep the government funding. So I pointed that out. And he gave this long, meandering non-answer. And he said something that stood out to me as odd. And it kind of shocked me, to be honest. And I went back and I looked at the transcript. And he said it was okay that we weren't here because, quote, there wasn't anything for us to do until the Senate acted, end quote. And I got to tell you, I'm shocked by that Republicans would say there wasn't anything for us to do. And can you talk about what the House should have been doing for the last 8 weeks on affordability, on health care, on grocery prices, on rent, on what looks like a war that might occur in the Caribbean, on the many things that people are looking for us to take action on? What would Democrats have done if we were in charge here?
Well, I thank the distinguished gentleman from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and it's an incredible question. It was a stunning answer. Given all of the problems that the American people are confronting right now, throughout the country, beginning with the affordability crisis, the cost of living in America is far too high. The American people throughout the country just made that clear last Tuesday.
Elected member of Congress.
After having tried 45 days for the American people to understand, insurance companies,
Bail out Argentina.
insurance companies, 1,032% stock prices up since 2010, 448% up from 2013. 85% of the revenues for insurers come from the federal government. What my Democratic colleagues are proposing is an insurance company enrichment scheme. It's literally what they're doing, is printing money in the Treasury and giving it to insurance companies. That's their solution for health care. Enriching insurance companies that are the very people that are telling the American people which care they can get and not get. There's no chance for an American to go to the doctor of his or her choice. There's no chance for them to go get care. There was no chance for my constituent who lives near Fredericksburg, Texas, to go to MD Anderson to get care because she's on Obamacare, which can't go to MD Anderson. And if the cancer that I had when I went to MD Anderson came back and I'm on Obamacare as a member of Congress, I couldn't go to MD Anderson because of the situation Democratic colleagues have put the American people in. Going around and preening that you're somehow caring for people more by giving them coverage for care that doesn't actually provide them care. While insurance companies get rich. $35 billion in subsidies in 2024 for people who didn't even use their plan. It's absolutely unconscionable. That is right. That is the correct word. It is unconscionable what we have done to the healthcare system, destroying it for the American people so that they can't get the care of their choice. That's what's happened. And now you hold the government hostage for 45 days and then try to lecture Republicans about it when you've been holding the American people hostage to a broken healthcare system for 15 years. That's what's been going on. The fact is, Madam Chairman or Chairwoman, we are here today trying to proceed with, I think, reason with 3 appropriations bills combined with a continuing resolution through January. After having tried with reason to fund the government through November 20th so that we can continue the debate on the various issues in question. But our Democrat colleagues refused to do it. And so now we've got the opportunity in front of us to extend fund government at current levels, roughly flat, trying to stave off the inflation that is the direct consequence of the massive amount of government funding that has been going on by both sides of the aisle, but heavily being promoted from my colleagues here on the other side of the aisle, who want us to throw another $1.5 trillion at it. That's literally what they were saying. It's not a solution. That's just printing more money while trying to go run campaign ads while you shut the government down for very clearly and obviously political purposes. I yield back, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chair, I wish the gentleman had that passion condemning the $40 billion bailout of Argentina, the right-wing cuckoo clock in Argentina. I wish he had the passion to condemn that.
Mr. McGovern and Ms. Scanlon, you're recognized.
Thank you. Leader Jeffries, we just heard a fairly passionate condemnation of the Affordable Care Act. You've been here a little longer than
Saddling our children.
Continue her.
Certainly, if the subsidies go away,
Are run by Republicans.
is there are 425 hospitals in urban areas today that claim rural status. So when we put money out there for rural hospitals, the urban hospitals step in and they take that money. In 2017, there were 3. Today, there are 425. So there's a lot of gamesmanship in the system. But according to KFF, and we can get rid of PBMs, there are a lot of things. There's a lot of agreement on how to reduce the cost of health care that I'm baffled that 90% of members of Congress would get rid of PBMs, and yet we can't get that passed and signed into law. But the gross premium, just for the American citizens watching, and I wasn't trying to ask a trick question, Mr. Jeffrey, the gross premium is going up 26%. That is what the insurance companies on average are raising their premiums from 2025 to 2026. Now, certainly if the subsidies go away, you're going to see a bigger share of the premium. But the American citizens that are covered under the Affordable Care Act aren't paying the gross premium. They're paying the gross premium minus the subsidy. So there's, I mean, if we're honest, the biggest part of the rate increase is coming from the insurance companies going up 26%. Their costs didn't go up 26%. I don't want to get into a debate. I wasn't trying to be smart. I'm just telling you, if you want solutions, there's solutions, but the solution comes in two areas. One, dropping the cost of health care in the country by getting the middlemen like PBMs out. 2 is you got to put competition back into the insurance industry, which means you're going to have to allow some smaller companies in that aren't big enough to do business nationwide. And you're going to have to give the American consumer the option to change plans and not be stuck with the plan they buy January 1. The thing I've never understood about what y'all did when y'all wrote the Affordable Care Act is when you buy your contract January 1, if it doesn't work for you, you got to stick with it for another 12 months. I mean, you should have any system that's going to work will have more insurance carriers with more competition and portability for the consumer so that they can move from carrier to carrier. We did it with no loss, no gain in the mid-90s. No loss, no gain was the provisions that we put in so that we stopped the carriers from games they were playing, if you would, however you want to put it. We stopped the carriers from doing a lot of things they were doing with no loss, no gain. There are a lot of things that can be done to fix it, but what you can't do is pretend that the Affordable Care Act works. It just doesn't. It's going to have to be rewritten.
Aggressive PBM reform until Donald Trump and Elon Musk killed that agreement.
It was actually
in
Mr.
December.
Musk.
Well, you know,
It's not elected.
It was actually Musk that was posted.
Well, whoever it was, Republicans apparently decided to pull the plug on that PBM reform. So we agree.
But Mr. Jeffries, you're from New York, correct?
That's right.
So I'm from Georgia. So I trust the Georgia state legislature to determine what our no loss, no gain, or pre-existing conditions clauses and portability options should be. And so that's one of the things as we go forward that we'll be pushing for is flexibility at the states. I'll yield. It's getting late, but thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Mr. Neguse, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Leader Jeffries and Whip Clark. And I think you've eloquently described the stakes for the American people with respect to the health care crisis that Republicans have created. I have a particular question about a different provision of the CR. Before I do, I don't know if you care to expound with respect to Representative Scott's questions or anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, no, I appreciate Representative Scott, raising the questions and giving us an opportunity to respond, unlike his prior colleague. And the thing that I would say is we agree there's a broken healthcare system in the United States of America, and we need to fix it. The problem that we confront right now is that tens of millions of Americans who are in open enrollment as we speak are going to see their health insurance premiums skyrocket to levels of unaffordability. That's the crisis that is immediately in front of us. These tax credits expire on December 31st of this year. And our Republican colleagues saw fit with great urgency to renew massive tax breaks for your billionaire donors on July 3rd of this year, while at the same time enacting the largest cut to Medicaid in American history and causing hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers, including in rural parts of Georgia and this country, to close. And that is why we believe this is a Republican health care crisis that needs to be decisively addressed with the fierce urgency of now.
And I couldn't agree more, Leader Jeffries. I want to talk about another provision that I described earlier as, I think, insidious. You and I, 4 years ago, Mr. McGovern, many of us were on the floor of the House on January 6th. There's a provision in this bill, this payday provision, for 8 Republican senators connected to January 6th, and I suspect you share the same outrage that I have about it. I wonder if you and Whip Clark might talk a bit about it.
Yeah, I'll yield to Whip Clark initially on it, and then we'll certainly have more to say.
This particular provision would be outrageous in the best of times. To say that we are going to use our appropriations process to put in specific personal payments to 8 specific senators in relation to an investigation, this is guaranteed money, as our colleague from Georgia pointed out. It is outrageous. And I heard our colleague, and I appreciated his comments and his candor about it. But what struck me was his reluctance to act in this moment. This is exactly the moment where we are not Democrats or Republicans, we're Americans who have identified something wrong, a payout in a bill when Americans are waving their hands and saying, we're not making it in this economy, we're not making it in this system. We have to hold ourselves accountable. And if we cannot reject and demand that that get out and proceed quickly with our work, then I would question what you think you're doing here. I don't think we have heard a single person try and muster any defense of this payout that was snuck into this bill. And the fact that at minimum we're going to pay U.S. sitting senators $8 million while we dismantle health care for people, while they can't afford to buy meat and coffee and groceries, they can't afford their electric bills. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? We have to be able to say no to this. This is blatant corruption and payouts that were snuck in, and we have to do this now. There's no excuse in the world for not acting.
Thank the distinguished gentleman for that question. It's extraordinary. And, for the American people, it's important to understand. We're talking about a multi-million-dollar slush fund of the legislative branch.
Sure that's snap.
In a full open debate on health care. Happy to do that anytime. But I don't think it needs to be done in the context of offering an amendment here to do, as I said, the Washington Post said, The solution is to keep shoveling more taxpayer money into a pit of ever larger subsidies, even though the national debt is $38 trillion, and which, by the way, will continue to drive the cost of health care up. I yield back to the gentleman from Georgia.
And I yield back to the chairwoman.
Thank you very much. I'm going to follow on with that, but I do want to set the record straight just a bit. Wikipedia is wrong.
All right.
I was baptized in church. My grandparents moved to the Bronx, and I spent some time with them. So my mother, though, was living in Brooklyn when she met my father there. So I do have most of the boroughs covered.
That's a beautiful thing. But you strike me as someone from the boogie down Bronx.
I took the train at Pelham Bay, walked through the park in the days when you could walk through the Pelham Bay Park and get on the subway. Anyway, I want to follow on with what my colleague, Texas Washington Post. The Affordable Care Act is really a misnomer. It's never been affordable, as the Washington Post said. It's just never. And let's be clear, the ACA subsidies will still be present in the individual market next year, despite all the things you all have been saying. The enhanced premium subsidies, which go directly to insurance companies and were justified as COVID relief when they were authorized, are expiring because Democrats insisted on a take it or leave it, no reforms approach. COVID is over. Democrats themselves were responsible for sunsetting these provisions, are responsible for setting up the sunsetting of these provisions at the end of December 2025. Republicans had nothing to do. We never voted for the Affordable Care Act. Yes, we voted to repeal it 70 times. We always had an alternative to it. We've heard over and over tonight that there were no alternatives. That is not true. Much of what has been said tonight is not true. We'll deal some more with that tomorrow. But we should not be rewarding our colleagues for taking the entire government hostage by rubber stamping a COVID-related program. COVID is over. Our Democrat colleagues would have the public believe that the only way to stabilize the individual insurance market is to flood it with subsidies. But we have a long history of offering market reforms like associated health plans, which have been you've fought against tooth and nail. We've supported HSAs, which you've fought against tooth and nail. You never seem to want the American people to have any control over their health care. It's always forcing people into government-controlled health care.
Would the gentlelady mind yielding just for a moment? Not for an entire back and forth. I just wanted to ask a question. Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and Donald Trump has taken a my way or the highway approach from the very beginning of his time in office. And so I'm just wondering why Republicans haven't seen fit. We can agree we have a broken healthcare system. We as Democrats want to fix it. But throughout the entirety of this year, unless I'm missing something, Where's the Republican action on addressing the health care of the American people, other than ripping Medicaid away from 14 million folks?
Well, I wasn't going to address every point you made. I said that earlier. But we did not rip away Medicaid from a single soul. That's another lie that you all have been putting out. We did not take Medicaid away from a single soul. We said that a million times when we passed the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. We never took one person off of Medicaid. What we've done over and over and over again is to attempt to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. I hope when you say we have a broken healthcare system, you're including in that, Mr. Jeffries, that we have waste, fraud, and abuse.
Am I to believe that the one big ugly bill loved and cherished Medicaid?
We have waste, fraud, and abuse. Now, we look forward to continuing that support when the shutdown's over and the American people aren't being held hostage. We've said that a million times since you all shut down the government. Let us get we had November and December to work on this after we got through the appropriations process. But no, that wasn't good enough for you all. And I wish we were in control. I truly wish we were in control.
Who's in
I
control?
will tell you, we have a majority of one in the House, and you know, and I know, that it takes 60 votes in the Senate. We have 53 Republicans.
Is that majority
in the
of one
Senate.
Donald Trump?
Democrats refuse to infuse a lick of accountability into the subsidies that they legislated. And again, you decided to sunset that. Per the CBO, in 2025, when we talked about Kaiser Family, now we're talking about CBO. In 2025 alone, 2.3 million ineligible individuals received these temporary credits, a broken healthcare system. The Biden administration took a hatchet to eligibility safeguards, weakened eligibility verification, reduced tax reporting, and allowed insurance brokers to game the system by switching enrollee plans. This led to enrollees, millions of people who never received health care. For context, $35 billion, approximately 6 million phantom enrollees in 2024 who never received health care. That's been alluded to here earlier. I think that the last thing we should be doing is rubber stamping this giveaway to insurance companies. The biggest subsidies in this country right now are given to insurance companies for people who aren't getting health care. We do want to fix the health care system in this country. We need to fix the waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicare, waste, fraud, and abuse in the Unaffordable Care Act. We want to work on it. Let's get the government back. Let's work on appropriations, and let's let the appropriate committees be working on health care. Let's not muddy the water. This has been an obfuscation exercise tonight by saying over and over, we got to do health care. Mr. Cole said over and over, it's not an appropriations process. It's other committees. So you all are trying to take away the American people's attention from what we're here to do tonight. Time on it. I yield myself back.
Have you heard from anybody in your district double or triple? I mean, and what do you tell these people? You know?
Mr. McGovern, I'll answer.
Okay.
No, I have not. But I heard when Obamacare was put in effect how horrible Obamacare was. Mr. McGovern, I'm answering your question. I heard how awful Obamacare was when it went into effect. I hear from people all the time, not just now, but for the last several years, how their insurance premiums have gone up over and over again.
Do you know the approval rating of the Affordable Care Act is like 65%, and Donald Trump's approval rating is at 37%? I'm happy to go down to your town hall together and listen to people, your stories. But I can't go back to my, just tell them,
McGovern,
screw you, you're on your own. We're not going to help you out.
Mr. McGovern, it's my time. And I yield back. And I thank our witnesses for being here. You're excused.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Ms. Wasserman Schultz, Ms. Dexter, Ms. Randall, Ms. Bonamici, Ms. Ansari, and Mr. Subramanian. You all know the rules. Your written testimony will be put in the record. We ask you to speak for no more than 5 minutes. And I'll just call out names in the order that we saw you come in. So Ms. Wasserman Schultz, my classmate.
Oh, now it's on. Again, thank you, Madam Chair, my 109th Congress classmate. Good to be with you again, Ranking Member McGovern. I appreciate the opportunity to testify this evening on my amendment to the appropriations package before the committee. As the ranking member of the Milcon VA subcommittee, it should be not lost on anyone that we are here on Veterans Day, considering a bill that not only unleashes brutal health care cuts on millions of Americans, but a bill that also underfunds critical Medicare for veterans subjected to toxic exposures. A significant expansion of veterans' benefits in a generation. So many other broken promises, we already see Republicans reneging on our commitment to veterans who put their very lives and health on the line to serve our country. During committee consideration of the Milcon VA bill this summer, I secured bipartisan support for my amendment to restore $51.7 billion in advance funding for the Toxic Exposure Fund, or TEF funding, that was also requested in the President's budget. And let me be clear, despite what some senators are claiming, advance funding the TEF is not a slush fund, nor is it illegal. It does nothing more than provide what we promised toxic exposed veterans who we passed the PACT Act to support, that we would provide certainty that funds will be available when they're needed for veterans subjected to toxic substances. It's a legal mechanism our subcommittee uses to ensure consistent, predictable funding for veterans' medical care. As a glaring and obvious example of why we do this, look no further than the last 42 days, where our Republican colleagues shut down this government because they refused to deal with preventing a health care.
I did not spend 20 years taking care of the sickest patients in our community to come to Congress and let their health care system be decimated. I came here to fight for my constituents, the people behind every statistic and policy debate, who just want to be able to see a doctor that they conscionable.
Of my very important address it, since she was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, Speaker Johnson's going to lose control. Because then every single member of Congress on the Republican side and our side will have to go on the record and answer last week. Complete transparency.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
These families.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one amendment. That's Amendment 23. This is the Republican payola that we've been talking about. And it's basically to strike this provision out of the bill. And this provision would simply allow so just to take a step back, because we've been talking about it here, but people may be joining in. But basically, Republicans in the Senate put this provision in, 8 or 9 of them, of the Senate Republicans would be given a legal pathway to force taxpayers to pay them millions of dollars over phone record collections during the January 6th investigations. It's a rewards program for Republican senators. And I would walk you through it, but the Republicans on this committee seem to know it well.
I'll delay my questioning. Mr. McGovern, you're recognized.
Well, first, I want to thank you all for being here at this hour, and I appreciate it. I support all your amendments, and I think people are tired of us we're losing their health care premiums.
Which we all should be.
Going to continue the
Kid was working.
To those values. These are
I just feel sad. EBT accounts for 42 million Americans and even asked the Supreme Court to intervene after a court ordered him to, because that is a lie. That is a lie. So the amendment that I am introducing today would protect SNAP benefits. It would make sure that no president, whether it's Donald Trump or any other president, could ever withhold SNAP benefits again during a shutdown. It would make sure continuity in the program, and it would reimburse states like New Mexico, who took the unprecedented action of spending tens of millions of dollars to make sure that our children would not starve, because we showed up for our people. Unlike, I'm sorry to say, Madam Chairwoman, your colleagues who are not here tonight. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Horsford, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, Ranking Member McGovern, you know, there have been really important historic moments that have happened in this very room and in this chamber that we're honored to serve in the House of Representatives. And I think back over those moments, and I wonder what those leaders